I just realized that I have the exact same hand position as Bricky. Hello everybody, my name is JohnnyFerno. Welcome back to the next reaction video. Well, this time around it might be one of my biggest reaction videos ever. Only topped by the MLP movies, which happened more than 5 years ago. More than 6. Time is gonna consume us all. Time is an illusion. Time is a man-made concept. But why is it... But why is it such a big reaction? Well, because we're gonna watch this handsome-ass man, named Bricky, also known as John Warhammer, and he's basically gonna give us a reintroduction to the world of Warhammer 40k. For those of you who don't know, he already has made basically every single Warhammer 40k faction explained. He made a part 1 and a part 2 years ago, which recently has popped the hell off, because apparently the VTuber to Warhammer pipeline is not as far as some people would think. So after he got more introduced into the VTuber sphere via VTubers like Mataracon, lots of other VTubers have watched his Warhammer Factions Explained video and got introduced to the hobby and the universe that way. His video was also a way I got introduced to Warhammer 40k outside of my IRL friends. For those of you who are curious, I do play Necrons. I do love my Egyptian Terminator skeleton boys that has gods in gigantic Pokeballs, basically. Long story short, he's gonna talk about it. But I am surprised that he has made this, which is basically what I would guess is a redo. As it says, a re-explained of every single Warhammer 40k faction. I guess because so much has happened since the first series of videos that he wanted to refresh the lore a little bit, make sure that it's more current, that it's more modern lore, and also because there were a few inadequacies. I've seen those videos so much now because of reactions. So it's like some jokes didn't really land. And he make the kind of jokes where, if you know, you know, but if you don't, it's kind of confusing. But then again, yeah, sometimes it's just fun to do that. And I just want to say, this is a very funny coincidence, because I'm currently working on my introduction to the SCP Foundation video. And this came around, just when I started to write on that project. I'm not saying I manifested it. I'm not saying that I somehow it's a funny coincidence. It's all I'm saying. But I'm very excited to be amongst the massive amount of people that's gonna be reacting to this video. I'm gonna be a drop in the reaction bucket, but I'm happy to be in those waters. Susie, they can't even see what the fuck you wrote! Remember, you had used all the space! You took all the space, people can't even see what you wrote up here! Susie, sometimes I just wonder. Sometimes I just wonder. To not take too much more of the time. And
supporting the sad excuse for a reaction channel. So true.
Guys, Anyway, thank you so much for the 100 bits. And Salty Boy, thank you so much for the tier 1 subscription for 10 months. Look, I didn't think Susie! Susie! What? What? Thank you for the 5 tier 1 subs. Why are we ever level 2 hype? What is happening? Okay, okay, I gotta be honest about something. When I started up this stream, I was expecting nothing. I was expecting a dead chat, because I don't know many people in my circle here on the internet who is interested in Warhammer stuff, or even interested in learning it, or just being a casual observer. But oh, shit happens. Thanks. Any more gamer subs? Back on track. So, This is gonna be nearly 2 hours of Warhammer 40k lore, and this is only part 1. It's gonna be, he's probably gonna explain to us what he's gonna cover in this part 1 video. And I'm of course good, and like a warning that I will of course pause along the way to say my piece, to react. I wanna be an example to all of these goddamn people who watches like videos like his. I'm not gonna go into this ramble again because I've already said it so many goddamn times on my live streams. Other fellow reactors, if any fellow reactors are watching this, please pause. We want to hear your thoughts, but we also want you to react, like to see the video and react to what's in it. Watching the video for your reaction, for your thoughts, and we're missing your thoughts when you talk over the important bits. Even the small bits. Like, honestly, if I could make an entire video where I just called out with the reaction community and a bunch of people in it for doing that sort of stuff. But alright, enough of crying and bitching about people I'm never gonna talk about, I'm never gonna talk with. Let's watch Bricky's every single Warhammer 40k video, faction, re-explained. Part 1. Let's go.
In the kind brightness of the far past, there was no war. Our galaxy was, for a long time, fairly empty and quiet. The first known species to appear during this time are known only as the Old Ones, cosmic entities that traveled across the galaxy with ease and seeded life through the stars. Shortly thereafter, a new species began to arise. The Necron tier. Evolving under the harshness of a devastatingly powerful star, the short-lived and irradiated Necron tier try to find the secret to eternal life and to be...
I forgot to say before, but hello Aether, Danish Faye, and hello Crystal, your musical pony, welcome aboard.
Freed from their terrible existence. As they expand through the stars, they find the Old Ones, and they plead to them to share the secrets of the universe and grant them purchase from their short and
God damn it! Professional streamer.
Painful existence. The Old Ones respond with a lull and a lamau, and with their immense power, they purchase from their short and painful existence. The Old Ones respond with a...
God damn it, I have to go a little bit more back for context.
...existence. As they expand through the stars, they find the Old Ones, and they plead to them to share the secrets of the universe and grant them purchase from their short and painful existence. The Old Ones respond with a lull and a lamau, and with their immense power, they force them back to their homeworld. The Necron tier, filled with rage and hatred, make it their duty to get revenge on the Old Ones. A revenge that would come swiftly as a chance encounter with other gods gave them a solution. These other gods were known as the C'tan, a race of highly powerful star-consuming entities. Do not fear, young mortals, for we, the C'tan, will provide you with the immortality you seek. Indeed. Come now, won't you shake a poor sinner's hand? Quoted from Mephetron.
That is basically what happened. Basically.
The Deceiver. The Necron tier accepted...
yes, because we all would trust someone called the Deceiver. You know, so like it's like in Lord of the Rings, Grima Wormtongue. Sounds like the most upstanding guy.
The C'tan's offer of immortality, but believe it or not, this turned out to be a ruse. A trick. The C'tan crafted gigantic furnaces and began the process of biotransference. The Necron tier willingly walked line by line into the furnace engines made by gods who devour stars and had their souls consumed instead. The short-lived, irradiated, and cancer-inflicted race of the Necron tier ceased to be, and the immortal, soulless Necrons remained. Now backed by the immense power of the C'tan, the Necrons rally against the Old Ones, and the bitter conflict in the stars at this time is known as the War in Heaven. Despite creating various races and entities to aid them in this battle, the Old Ones are overwhelmed and eradicated down to the last.
Also, I'm kind of surprised that he is starting with, like, basically the intro to like the entire like timeline. So I guess he's gonna do like this intro bit and then gonna do his "Hello, I'm Bricky" and stuff. So I don't know, just a summarization of the beginning of the Warhammer 40k universe, I guess.
To the sheer power of the Catan fat off the souls of the Necron tier, and with an army of unthinkable robotic slaves at their behest.
Yeah.
However, the Catan are greedy, spiteful gods, and when there was no foe worth killing, they turn on each other.
Yep.
The Necrons then put their sights towards the Catan and lay waste to them, securing their freedom. The once subservient Necrons now control their former masters.
Yep.
Worn out and weakened by these wars, the Necrons under their leader Zarek the Silent King lie dormant, with a plan to eventually wake and reclaim control over the galaxy. Over millions of years, empires rise and they fall. The species created by the Old Ones have footholds over the galaxy, but on a pale blue dot in the thick of all this conflict, humanity begins to evolve.
Yeah.
And for the most part, the basic path of humanity's evolution remains the same as it is now for almost 15,000 years. Right now, in the 21st century, this is canon. You, right now, Twitch streamer reacting to this video.
I was expecting something, but that direct call out. Ah, damn, I dropped my glasses. Like, of course he knew about at this point that so many people were reacting to stuff. So, of course, yeah, I'm not surprised, but it's still the, like, getting called out.
You existed at a point in the war.
Was it? Also, those eyes in the background.
Warhammer universe.
What's that?
But with
Wait, what does that say? Use. Oh, we see you. Nobody will know. Wait. Nobody will notice. Okay.
But with time, humanity's ambition and the power of their technology becomes unmatched, and the golden age of expansion begins. Humanity starts to branch out through the stars with powerful tools used for agriculture, mining, and expansion. Some branches of humanity would eventually settle far away from Earth itself, and around this time, the psychic ability of humans are greatly expanded, and what we begin to know as psychers appear. But despite all the progress, things would begin to collapse. The machines created to aid humanity would turn on them in M23, an event known as the Cybernetic Revolt, and trade would begin to collapse due to the immaterial warp, aka actual hell, beginning to cause ruptures in space and time. These warp stones would separate humanity, and this would be what is known as the Age of Strife. The warp, a sea of souls, storing all thought, emotion, and the souls of those who have passed on, begin fluctuating into something terrible, as far on the horizon, something horrendous was brewing. You see, the warp isn't just a random assortment of chaotic energy. It is fairly well organized, thanks to those living in the galaxy. The warp itself acts as an afterlife of sorts, and the actions of the innumerable amount of creatures who live in the galaxy have manifested a pantheon of organized entities known as the Forces of Chaos. At their helm are three major entities: Khorne, Nurgle, and Tzeentch. However, a fourth one, Slaanesh, was about to be born. The ancient Eldar were one of the first
Oh, that's like old Eldar art. Old Warhammer 40k art was wild. I'm sorry, that freaking bakery in the back. Holy hell. But yeah, I can easily see like, I can easily see normal Eldar, Dark Eldar, and the Harlequins, but it's just like, damn.
species created by the Old Ones, and due to their extreme and unbridled excess, the birthing of Slaanesh tore a hole in the galaxy and forever split the Eldar into those of the craft world, who sought to bring their species back together, and those of the Drukhari, who wished to continue what caused the birth of Slaanesh in the first place. The birthing of this fourth Chaos God settled the warp storms of the Immaterium and ended the Age of Strife, but humanity was still fractured. So one man revealed himself and spearheaded an immense attempt to reunite all the fractured pieces of humanity.
The man himself.
That man was the Emperor of Mankind. After reclaiming the nearly destroyed Earth, the Emperor embarked on the unification wars to unite humanity under the banner of the Imperium of Man. However, due to the very long and devastating impact of the Age of Strife, humanity as we know it is not the same. To reconquer Earth, the Emperor would need more than mere men. Great beings, known as the Thunder Warriors, were recruited by the Emperor to reclaim the Earth with ease. But these warriors are a blunt tool and had, overstayed their welcome. He would need something better, and that solution would be known as the Space Marines. Superhuman soldiers that will have the skill and cunning exponentially greater than the mortal man. These new warriors would be commanded by an elite group of his very own sons known as the Primarchs. Unfortunately though, Daddy didn't charge the baby monitor, and his 18 sons would be stolen by the For
those of you who are confused by that bit, the reason why he was corrected from 20 to 18 is because 2 of them do not exist. Or, well, they did, but their factions and their information was redacted. We don't know why. We don't know what they did. But they did something so incredibly bad that all records of their existence, both the Primarch and their legions, have been wiped. Has been wiped from, like, all records. And that's why there's only 18 legions.
Forces of chaos and scattered across the galaxy. This would begin the Great Crusade, a monumental task to take back the stars in the name of humanity and reclaim the lost Primarch sons. However, he would need the fires of industry to make this happen. Looking to the distant cousins of Mars, the Emperor signed a treaty with the technologically irradiated hellscape of the Red Planet and allowed the cult of the machine god, the Mechanicum, to supply his crusade. While Space Marines were the tip of the spear, their numbers paled to the vast might of the Imperial Army and Navy. The Astra Militarum and their seemingly endless numbers make up the bulk of the fighting force for humanity, supplied by the intelligence and prowess of various agents of the Imperium, such as rogue traders and assassins.
Yeah, so what mainly consists of the forces of the Imperial of Man is the Imperial Guard, which is basically, imagine Starship Troopers in very World War I, World War II style aesthetics, Space Marines, and then on the like technological support side, you could say, is the cult Mechanicus, the machine cult of Mars. Those are like the main bulks of the Imperial Army. There's also like the Sisters of Battle, Custodians and stuff, but those are like, as far as I can tell, the main 3. With like the sisters as well. But
due to the lack of connectivity between the worlds, what a society had become over thousands of years became mysterious and varied. Tools once used for harvesting and agriculture now are being used as machines of war in the form of Imperial Knights. Some of these fractures of humanity would even be changed further and become unrecognizable to the average human, with differences in size, skin color, appendages, cat ears, sometimes.
Yeah, cat ears do exist. There's the things in the Imperium called abhumans. Basically, they're sci-fi excuse for different, like, fantasy creatures, but they also wanted them in sci-fi. So you have ogrins, which is basically ogres, big lumbering brutes that are as smart as a toddler. And there's also, in the lore, cat people. Cat girls exist in 40k.
Would go so far to become their own galactic societies, like the miners of the galactic core and their immense supercomputers, forming the leagues of Votan. After an incredible amount of effort and books, the lost sons of the Emperor would be reunited.
I have not started on any books yet because I don't know where to. I'm afraid to start. Like, I'm gonna have to choose something to start on because I do want to listen to like audiobooks and stuff. Because Warhammer, as far as I've heard from snippets, really good writing.
And the Imperium of Man would be firmly established. This, however, would not last. Be it intentional or accidental, the Emperor would not reveal to his sons the true nature of the galaxy and the terrors of the warp. And this oversight would result in one of the most impactful wars in humanity's history. The favorite son of the Emperor, Horus, would fall to the powers of chaos and turn on his father. This betrayal, this backstabbing, this heresy, this Horus heresy.
He said it. He said it. Horus heresy. He said it. Title drop.
Would result in a split in the Imperium with devastating consequences. Half of the Emperor's loyal sons would fall to chaos and become the Chaos Space Marines, along with the forces of the Dark Mechanicum and the Chaos Knights. The conflict would result in the absolute obliteration of Horus and the physical death of the Emperor himself. The near-dead body of the Emperor would be placed on the Golden Throne to serve as a beacon of humanity and allow for the continued ability to travel the stars, protected by his most loyal, the Adeptus Custodes. The Imperium would be vulnerable during this age of rebirth, and Terra would find itself under siege by one of the most formidable species in the galaxy, the Orcs. As time went on and memories of the Emperor's vision began to fade, the Emperor would become less of a head of state and more of a religious figure, and the Imperium would change to reflect this. The leadership,
despite he never wanted to be a god, the Emperor was the biggest atheist you could ever imagine. He was full of the belief that religion was basically a fool's it was the words and thoughts of a fool. Religion was like it distracted, it divided, and it had no purpose and was absolutely ridiculous. So what he did during the unification wars on Earth, or Terra, was basically eradicating all religion. He wanted
Makes sense. Oh, what fun is there in making sense?
Pretty much. In fact, there's I don't know if it's a book or a short story, but called The Last Church, where the Emperor meets the last priest of the last church, and it's, as far as I've heard, a very good story. But yeah, major atheist, never wanted to be seen as a god, even though massive 7-foot-tall dude in golden armor, blazing sword, halos, like, you're sending mixed signals, you gotta admit.
Leadership on a planet would be at the behest of the High Lords of Terra, and their actions would be courtesy of the incomparable power and authority of the Inquisition. The zealots of the Imperium would intensify and create a brand new era known as the Age of Apostasy. And this ecclesiarchal command of the Imperium would end up with one of the strongest fighting forces of Terra, the Adeptus Sororitas. Over time, this age would come to pass, and we would approach the 40th millennium of Warhammer 40,000.
Yeah.
Which, you guessed it, would come with its own form of problems. A primitive species once found during a recon mission would be able to evolve in relative secrecy for 6,000 years, becoming a highly advanced coalition of aliens known as the Tau Empire. And if the threats of the galaxy weren't bad enough, there are threats from outside the galaxy. As a monster has begun to wrap its tendrils around the Milky Way, the Tyranids, monsters that serve a psychic hive mind and present tactics previously unseen in the Milky Way. Be it a direct assault with their monstrous bug-like presence, or through the more covert gene stealer cults, the presence of yet another threat in the galaxy is proving to be overwhelming to the Imperium.
Oh no, not the hive mind. It's basically the space bugs, the biological space race in every sci-fi story, but the Tyranids are pretty terrifying. And also, like, I don't know why, but something in my head keeps waiting for, like, the proper, like, hello, greeting, introduction. Is it weird that I, like, feel weird that we haven't had that yet? Maybe it's just a me thing, but I'm just waiting for him to be like, hello everybody, my name is Bricky, welcome to this retelling of Warhammer and stuff. So maybe it's just a me thing.
In the 41st millennium, there is no peace among the stars. At any point, your life can and will be threatened by the Xenos races uncountable, or by the arch enemy of chaos within, or by the decroded terror that is the Imperium itself. It is to live in the cruelest and most bloody regime imaginable.
I guess what he's basically doing is setting the scene. He's like saying, this is the situation, this is how everything's been fucked up, stuff like that. I guess that's what he's doing.
Forget the power of technology and science, or the safety of promise and understanding. For in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war.
Now I was just talking about, now we got it. Let's fucking go. Ah, give it to me, Brickster.
A fantastic job once again, Mr. Kurz, the Night Haunter himself.
Oh, right, I've seen this ad.
Didn't you love that, my faithful audience? Once again, we have another criminal over the course of 6 hours break every single bone in his body. And with that, once again, our glorious leader has brought the crime rate to 0%. Always brought to you here on Nostromo News.
For context on that one, Nostromo is basically a massive crime planet. Think Gotham on a planetary scale. And one of the primarchs of the Space Marines came from this planet, and his way of preserving order, to make a long story incredibly short, was to basically torture people on live television, radio streaming, whatever, to set an example. If you did anything bad on Nostromo, you would have terrible things done to you, have it broadcasted, and let it be known that this is the consequences. And that's how he got peace.
I'm your host, Bricky. Thank you once again for joining us. Our top stories for tonight. The weather forecast appears to be rainy with extra dark, so make sure you pack those extra batteries for your lamp packs. And of course, let's not forget the fantastic gang violence problem we're currently having. Oh, I'm sorry, what's that? Oh, right, it's gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's looking to be a chilly one tonight as well, so make sure your skin capes are nice and tight.
Skin capes?
Wait, hold on, one moment.
No. And also, yes, I do know what he's about to make an ad about, and I'm gonna let it run because he deserves his ad time.
Adamantium reserves have tripled? Wait, I'm sorry. Self-harm rates have gone down to 0%. The Night Haunter smiled? No. This could only mean one thing. It is the Strawman News' great privilege to bring some color back in your life with the brand new 3-part Gamer Subs exclusively on this here news network. That's right, your esteemed host Bricky, myself, is dropping a 3-part Gamer Subs release for pre-order, available now and only for a couple of weeks.
I saw this ad on his podcast channel at Adeptus Ridiculous, and I bought the bottle. It was a very nice looking bottle, and I bought it. So it is like, so when it's on its way, it's on its way.
Not only does it include a completely brand new artwork reskin of the Sweet 6-pack flavor, one of the highest selling flavors in the entirety of Gamer Subs, but it also comes with the first ever all-over print Gamer Subs 32-ounce jug. And if that isn't enough for you, if the phenomenal drink and
I would have bought both the jug and the flavor, but international shipping, God, that hurts.
And drink holder is not enough for you. We have a desk mat to go along with it. That's right, the Herculean look of the brand new Sweet 6-pack style is here. We're still looking at muscles beyond belief, but this time we're talking taste, we're talking Atlas, we're talking smooth. And if that wasn't enough, I, your co-host specifically, should you pre-order all 3 of these items, will personally hand sign a note for you thanking you for supporting this network. All of this you
I would have loved to get all 3 things, Bricky, but again, I don't live in the US, and God, I have to pay for that literally.
Can receive for 10% off if you go down in the description of this video and click the link, or go to gamersubs.com/Bricky and use code Bricky. Save 10% off with code Bricky. Bring some color back into your life and increase production across the board for our glorious leader, the Night Haunter. Thank you, Gamersubs, for sponsoring the Strawman News, and let us move on to our next scheduled program. 5 years ago, I made every Warhammer 40k faction explained. A passion project of mine for a universe that I enjoyed so much. Its main purpose was to be a drawbridge, the separation between the layman who had only ever seen the big armored blue man situated neatly next to a Wetzel's Pretzels, and then the hardcore Warhammer lore nerd. That was just too wide, and there was nothing bridging these two together. Since 2020, Warhammer has exploded in popularity thanks to COVID, quality game updates, and a few excellent video games, and a couple mini-series. The sheer volume of people who have...
And also the Emperor Text-to-Speech device YouTube series. That was amazing. I also got into Warhammer 40k because of that. God fucking damn it, Games Workshop. Let people make things of your property. It's free advertisement.
Told me they have purchased miniatures due to that video alone makes me feel as if Games Workshop owes me commission. However, that video is incomplete. I was not a casual fan, but I was also not a hardcore lore junkie. In the 5 years since that video's release, multiple channels have sprouted up, and the drawbridge between casual to the obsessed has never been wider or easier to traverse. Even I, myself, have been a part of Adeptus Ridiculous, a podcast teaching lore in a much simpler and condensed form. Needless to say,
I can say, as one who has listened to a bunch of those podcasts, they are short, about over an hour, top hour and a half long, and about any subject in Warhammer you could think of. And it's a very newbie friendly, fun way to learn if you're ever interested. Would recommend. In fact, link in the description below if you want to go for it.
Say, I've learned a lot. Warhammer is so much more than just Spaceman shoots big gun. It has also grown substantially from its origins, being a Warhammer fantasy spin-off just in space. Now, it is a black library filled with immensely deep characters, difficult themes, and even some tear-jerking stories. It is a backdrop for a million stories over a million worlds, and I did not see its true depth in 2020. But now, I'd like to share what I've learned. We just had a brief summary of the world and each faction that takes place during it. And we did that because to truly understand each faction, we must understand what makes them the way they are.
It was easy.
To do so, we need to begin in chronological order, discussing their origins, their culture, their powers, and of course, what makes them oh so grimdark. So let's begin with the group that started it all and sing praise to the Infinite Empire.
Oh, so he's not splitting it up as humanity and then aliens. Okay, Necrons first. In the original, couple of videos he did, Necrons were the last. Fun how things work out that way.
As mentioned before, the Necron tier were the original form of the Necrons, an alien race far away from us that lived short, painful lives due to the irradiation of their star. Normally, this would manifest as like a sort of cancer, a space cancer of sorts. The Necrons are very much inspired by the ancient Egyptian aesthetic, but unlike the windswept dunes commonly associated with it, the irradiated hellscape the Necron tier endured was far from picturesque. This also translates into their hierarchy. They are a race of nobles and peasants.
Yeah.
Most of the peasants would often live for their very short amount of time, only a couple of decades, while the nobles tended to have better care and would live a little bit longer, but still far less than the average lifespan of a human, even today in the 21st century. The leader of the Necrons was Zarek, the Silent King.
A badass.
He was the one who took the deal with the Catan and the Deceiver. Of course, he wasn't aware of the fact that they were known as the Deceiver at the time, but the
Yeah, that is the point that has to be pointed out. We, in the meta sense, we know that the NCT was called the Deceiver. He didn't introduce himself as such.
whole species was blinded by hate after being debased by the Old Ones on their quest to cure their illness. The sheer pain that underwent the Necron race can't be understated, as their fear was manic. The Catan are, of course, gods that eat stars, and when the leader of your species tells you to march into the gigantic green furnaces to ascend to immortality, you march. The scenes from these are long lines of both the peasantry and nobles clutching their loved ones in a frantic act to save their own lives. Many of them already inflicted in the late stages of this space cancer, some of them crawling into the biotransference furnaces, trying to outrace death itself, without realizing death was the one who made these to begin with. What came out
in fact, one of the Catan, sorry, major nerd moment incoming, one of the Catan called the Nightbringer. It's like typically depicted as a like big dude wearing a cloak and a scythe. His impact on death was so massive that it basically, if I remember correctly, that it basically left a psychic imprint upon every, like, for example, every human of what death looks like. So in the Warhammer 40k universe, the depiction of death with the cloak and the scythe came from one of these Catan star gods.
The other side was a soulless husk. And I say that literally. A soul is not an abstract concept like it is in our world, an immaterial version of oneself discussed and debated in religion and philosophy. No, in Warhammer, a soul is a real, tangible item of oneself. And the Catan basically were just like to every single person who went in their furnaces. If you were a peasant, you came out a Necron warrior, and you as an individual have ceased to be. You have no mind, you have no soul, and your body, as you know it, is made of an extremely advanced mass of re-knitting living metal known as necrodermis. You cannot think for yourself, for you do not have a brain.
No soul. They have a body, they have sort of a mind, but no soul. They are basically God fucking damn it. I'm not gonna be pulled into the spooky pyramids, okay? I'm fine, I'm good.
To think with. All you do now is await protocols from your overlords, which are the nobles who came out of the furnaces with their minds intact, not their souls, mind you, because...
Oh, right, yeah, that is true. Like, souls are basically not present in the entire Necron race, but they, basically the higher rank, the higher of a noble you were, the more of your personality you had left. So, high-ranking Necron, they still have a personality.
But their minds are very much intact. These nobles now have command protocols, and they are able to command all of their peasantry and do with them whatever they wish. Zarek, the Silent King, is the most advanced of all the Necrons, a perfect metallic version of himself with incredible power and intelligence. His strength allowed him to lead the undead and the unthinking armies of the Necrons to battle against the Catan when they were at their weakest due to their incessant infighting, and then win back their freedom. But gods cannot die. No. So in reality, what occurred is the Catan were shattered into thousands of pieces, and each shard of their god was trapped in a stasis vault and mind controlled to do the bidding of the Necrons they once enslaved. The biggest challenge they face now are actually the upstarts of the galaxy. The Eldar and the Orcs were quite prominent, and as you can imagine, a galactic war really takes its toll on the joints, or I guess the servos. It was in their best interest to wait out the galactic rise of the other races and come back at a more opportune time. So they went into stasis via these massive tomb complexes hidden beneath various worlds, biding their time until it was once again their opportunity to rule the galaxy.
The Necrons needed a nappy. A gigantic nappy. Of about 60 million years, I believe.
Zarek, the Silent King, as penance for his failure to his people, exiled himself into the darkness between stars for the next 60 million years, with his perfect memory a constant reminder of the doom he inflicted upon his people. Flash forward to the modern day, and the Necrons are reawakening, but it isn't working as well as it could be.
Nope.
Whether the tomb world is reawakened naturally or by some Imperial moron stepping on a green glowing rock, the Necrons have come back to reclaim a galaxy they consider rightly theirs. But 60 million years of hypersleep have taken their toll. Many Necron dynasties awake with systems unrestored and huge swaths of their population's minds completely lost. Necron nobles wake with various mental faculties compromised, sometimes exhibiting traits similar to excessive paranoia, schizophrenia, or even dementia. One notable Necron, Nemesaur Zandrek, believes that he is still back on his home planet fighting off separatists and interlopers.
Oh,
See,
wow.
Oberyn, the separatists come, attempting to outflank me as they did at the 4th Battle of Vindach. How they calculate that daubing themselves green and roaring like savages will produce a different outcome, I cannot fathom. But it is of no account. Ready, my legions. Another glorious victory shall soon be ours.
I guess he's talking about the orcs. But goddamn.
Other individuals, such as the esteemed Imhotep the Stormlord, seek to usurp the newly returned Silent King for rightful ruler over the Necron race, believing his time has come to an end, while scientists and archaeologists like Trazen the Infinite and Orikin the Diviner spend thousands of years bickering over artifacts and petty squabbles. Truly,
Trazen is the biggest, like, asshole in the galaxy, and he's hilarious. I don't know. I'm not gonna say anything on like in the case Bricky's gonna talk about.
the Necrons are a faction of unthinkable, unimaginable power, held back entirely by their own hubris and 60 million years of stasis. It is a species that does not know of time, only of the ravages brought by it. A pharaoh of a dynasty may just be as frightened to awake completely mad as they are to be assassinated while they sleep. Thousands of years pass in an instant. There is a play, like an opera play, a retelling of the war in heaven in the Necron culture that takes 40 years to witness, because why leave? You have no need to eat or vacate your bowels. You are immortal, but you are soulless. Despite the Necrons' incredible technology, their mastery over time, reality itself, despite all of this, they still are missing a soul. And therein lies the biggest struggle. Most Necrons look to conquest the galaxy, kill the interlopers like the humans, Eldar, and Orcs that scrape at a fraction of their power. But the end goal for many, including Zarek himself, is to return the souls to their bodies, to undo the horrible fate he cast upon them. This is not the interest of all. Many simply wish to rule their dynasty with an iron fist and kill all they consider unworthy. But to many others, it is to undo the decision that doomed them all. Before they can do that, there is a pest that needs exterminating. That is the fundamental understanding of the Necrons. They are so hyper advanced that their science borders on magic. They play with the fundamental aspects of reality and time. Their mastery of the physical galaxy is the strongest in the universe. Their weapons reduce people to the barest molecules, and they have devices capable of causing stars to supernova. They are unfathomably difficult to kill, as if you do fell one of their number, the living metal reknits itself, and the reanimation protocols allow it to come back alive once again. They're masters of teleportation, and often killing a Necron fully will just have its consciousness consciousness translocated back to their tomb world to await reassembly. Normally, they utilize large phalanxes of warriors and honorary combats, but some of them have fallen to various mind viruses. The destroyer cults are hell-bent on killing anything and everyone that lives with an overwhelming force. And then there's the flayed ones, Necrons cursed with I have no mouth and I must scream, a panic attack virus, as the last laugh of Landogo, the Flayer Catan. Slowly losing their minds, they strip apart their foes and adorn their bodies with the skin of their enemies, trying to better return to their old feelings of flesh and blood. The Necrons are...
The Flayer Necrons are terrifying. Like, they are so deranged that, like, other Necrons keep them at, like, basically in, try to at least keep them in, like, isolated zones. And apparently, again, if I remember correctly, they have the ability to basically teleport through this weird way of seeking the nearest combats so they can flay more and thus get more living tissue for their body so they can feel more alive. It's fucking insane.
A degraded version of their mighty empire and still one of the biggest threats in the galaxy. The only thing keeping them at bay currently is their awakening sickness and their infighting with no care to the timeline. But they are coming. And slowly, they plan to rid this galaxy of the vermin that inhabit it. My people shackled the stars and broke mortality when the species you sprang from had barely left the slime pools it spawned in. Our wars burned reality, and the dominion of our kings is without limit. The ground you tread on is not yours. It is ours. The war in heaven was a catastrophic time for the galaxy, and as stated in the above quote, burned reality. Of course, souls exist in Warhammer, and in the case of the Necron tier, they were consumed by the star gods. This begs the question, however, if you were to pass on, expire, as one might put it, where would your soul go? The answer to this is the warp. In Warhammer, a soul is real. And so is hell. The afterlife, the Empyrean, the Sea of Souls, the Immaterium. All of these names refer to the dimension parallel to our own known as the warp. Now, the warp is not like our reality. It does not follow the classic normalcy of time and space. It is defined as the Sea of Souls, and it acts like this in a more literal way than you can realize. To imagine the warp is to imagine the sea itself. Hell is real, and you can surf on it. It has a current and can become more dangerous depending on where you go and how bad the weather is. As the Immaterium is a reflection of our reality and of our souls, all thoughts, all emotions, all feeling that goes with a soul is passed on into the warp. If an entire planet decides it's going to engage in a blood-fueled rampage of murder and gore, then the warp around that planet will be affected in a similar manner. It's not something that you can see. It is a parallel, not perpendicular dimension. But it is changing. To expose oneself to the warp for any period of time invites certain death outside of the most iron-willed of individuals, and to stare into it will drive one mad. Much like the open seas, things dwell in the warp. Whether these beings were always there and were just emboldened by the carnage of the galaxy, we can only speculate at. At a time, you could say it was more calm, but a certain faction's galactic war in heaven didn't do it any favors. Now the warp is turbulent, and its realms belong to a pantheon of gods known simply as
Chaos. Like, he's really starting out with the, like, some of the two of the like the biggest players in the 40k universe. Necrons and Chaos are like some of, like, if not the biggest players, just in terms of scale and power. Woof.
The forces of chaos are beings that serve directly under their patron deity. There are 4 current gods of chaos at the moment: Khorne, Tzeentch, Nurgle, and Slaanesh. Each of them represent various facets of and emotions of sentient species and play a great game against one another for total control over their realms. Interestingly enough, while their disciples have physical forms we can understand, the Chaos Gods do not have a physical visual that you can perceive in reality. So while there are tons of fantastic fan art, we do not know what they truly look like.
Yeah, like if you see, like, I guess that is like the most typical depiction of the 4 Chaos Gods. But since they are basically ethereal forms of concepts, we don't know what they look like. We can make educated guesses, come up with amazing concepts and designs, but it's basically asking what the concept of murder would look like.
Though they are conveniently color-coded. Khorne is the god of blood and murder, carnage and slaughter. He is the one who is most powered by the wholesale killing of any living thing. For Khorne cares not from where the blood flows. With a sacred number of 8, he is the lord of all things involving killing and blood and gore. The champions are extremely strong as well, with monumental muscles and extremely large weapons. A true analog to Khorne would be his greater demon, the Bloodthirster, an enormous muscle-bound flying devil with an axe so large it splits tanks in a single swing. They move in
and the entire thing of like Khorne doesn't care where the blood comes from as long as it's flowing. That's very real. There has been battles where some on Chaos's side, like Space Marines, Chaos Space Marine stuff, started killing each other because, like, for reasons. Either for a ritual or whatever. They needed blood for something. And thus they took it. They couldn't take it from the enemy, so they took it from each other because Khorne doesn't care. Khorne is about carnage wherever and however.
Into battle with armor of brass adorned by the skulls of their foes and pools of freshly spilt blood. This may appear to be quite frightening, of course, demonic, one might say. But in the world of chaos, all emotions feed one of these gods in one way or another. If you were to define Khorne with single words, you would use blood, carnage, murder, skulls. But you'd be missing out on important ones like strength, honor, prowess, courage, and skill. Khorne is not just about the wholesale slaughter of people. He is about the honor and power of martial combat. The true strength there is in besting someone in physical strength and skill. Of course, a murderer would be someone who would feed Khorne, but a soldier could feed Khorne. A martial artist or professional fighter could feed Khorne. A warrior, good or bad, feeds Khorne. A diplomat does not. A premier soldier does. A GoFundMe does not. This is what leads many mortals down the path of Khorne, for he will bless those that bring him enough skulls. And in a world this destructive, there are many ways to reap a high tally for him. Prepare the dread claws and unchain the mad ones. Glorious battle awaits us today, for the world below has refused to surrender. Let us descend upon them with fury and rage, giving no quarter and sparing only those warriors who fight well enough to earn a place amongst us. As to the rest, their lives and possessions are ours, but their skulls are for Khorne. Normally, if I ever
blood for the blood god, skulls for the skull throne,
want to explain Khorne, I just kind of show him this clip.
I'd never stab you in the back, Shepard. Warriors like you and me, straight to the face.
Hell yeah.
Moving on, Tzeentch is the second god, the god of trickery and mischief, the changer of ways, the great conspirator and the architect of fate. With a sacred...
Take any trickster god you know from any pantheon, Loki, Coyote, stuff like that, and then amp it up by about 20. Complex stories, lies, and plans so intricate and complex that even he sometimes confuses himself.
the changer of ways,
Oh,
the
you would
great
never admit it.
conspirator and the architect of fate. With a sacred number of 9, Tzeentch is truly the god of change in all of its forms, but there is an obvious undercurrent of mischief and cunning. Tzeentch is such a liar that his pants have gone thermonuclear. His favorite pastime is asking questions that have no answers while simultaneously making up answers on the spot to a question he didn't ask.
Have you ever had a dream that
It's basically trying to argue with a person on Twitter or on Reddit who is adamant that they're correct when they are so incredibly wrong.
you want him to do you so much you could do anything?
He is such a conniving little bastard that every emotion of lying, of scheming, of trickery is a direct way to help feed him. An unfaithful partner, a politician, a spy. All these people feed Tzeentch in one way or another, and it doesn't matter if the intentions are good. Acceptance does not feed Tzeentch. Change does. Tzeentch doesn't care about your facts. He only wants opinions. Because he represents change, he also represents hope, though. Schemes are not always bad, and even the hope to make a better tomorrow is the change he seeks. Because he is the architect of fate and the mastery of sorcery, his presence is purely unknowable. Every depiction of a Tzeentchian demon contains more eyes than are necessary and more mouths than I know what to do with. It is a
Tzeentch is the most Lovecraftian of the 4 Chaos Gods in terms of like aesthetics.
A biblically accurate angel if the angel gaslit you into thinking birds are government drones.
Ha! Yeah.
But are they? The creatures at his disposal adorn themselves with the knowledge of sorceries and the unknown, all to provide a mind-crushing experience. Fighting demons from outside of our reality is difficult enough, but fighting demons from unreality, purposely attempting to trick you, is a whole new thing entirely. And that is before we even get started on the gigantic bird of sorcery you're going to need to face.
Yeah.
Do not ask which creature screams in the night. Do not question who waits for you in the shadow. It is my cry that wakes you in the night, and my body that crouches in the shadow. I am Tzeentch, and you are the puppet that dances to my tune. Third of the Chaos Gods is the one of acceptance of rot and
Papa
pestilence,
Nurgle.
the grandfather himself, Papa Nurgle.
He chunky. He's a big chunk. Also, if you're grossed out by things, it's like gore and bugs and sickness and stuff, be prepared.
Nurgle is the exact opposite of Tzeentch. Where Tzeentch believes in change and hope for a future, Nurgle believes in stagnation and the end of everything. At one point or another, we will all decay. We will all rot, and we will all end. And with a sacred number of 7, every single thing, pestilence, boil, and everything in between, comes under the great shadow and girth of Nurgle himself. For Nurgle,
He's probably going to go into this, but Nurgle is by far ironically the jolliest of the 4 Chaos Gods. His entire faction of demons and Chaos Space Marines are like by far the closest thing you can see to like happy people or creatures in their own twisted way.
the plight of mortals is his fear and wine. And no matter how solid life might be, everything will decay in the end. In the creation of life, there must be an end to that life. And nobody has more creations to end lives than Grandfather Nurgle himself. Every boil, every blemish, every pus-filled wound and disease, every rot and every plague is kept and concocted by Nurgle. This, humorously, keeps Nurgle as a jovial god. He is full of life and laughter, and by creating as many diseases as he possibly can, he shares that joy with mortals. I mean,
that is basically like if whenever I become sick, for instance, I may like type in a chat or make a tweet about like, I've gotten the gift of Nurgle. Basically, I've gotten sick.
His envoy is the great unclean one, and look at how happy he is. And there's a lot A lot of him to love. A fear of death in general is feeding Nurgle. All disease makes him stronger, but to pray for salvation for a wounded loved one is to feed Nurgle. The timeless and inevitable fear that one day you will rot and decay is what gives him strength. The Peloton won't feed Nurgle. Licking the doorknob on a public bathroom certainly does. However, should you embrace your grandfather's gifts, you may find an end to your pain. Maybe. All mortal followers of the Chaos Gods found themselves there in one way or another, either through the direct worship or the slow corrupting of their souls. But those that take Nurgle's gifts and embrace the decay of their bodies may end up being chosen among his few as a faithful servant. In doing so, you will be free of the pain caused by Nurgle's ailments, and you may even find yourself just as jovial and happy as he is. Maybe. His enemy.
Before we continue, there's also some theories that Nurgle basically represents the cycle of life and death, representing nature. Things live and they die. That's like one of the big fan theories that Nurgle also represents.
Enemies shall wither and die. His allies shall wither and die. The universe and all within it shall wither and die. And when the great corruption has settled over the land and permeated the very foundations of reality itself, then shall the Lord of all rise from the rot and ruin, spread his arms wide to reclaim all of his dutiful children. Those were the three major Chaos Gods for a very long time, emboldened by war and death on a galactic scale, ever present, but now fact on the suffering of a galaxy. One race, for a while, was able to elude the pull of chaos, an advanced race of psychically attuned aliens whose master over the physical world was so strong that chaos could not glean from them the morsels of power they once had, or so they couldn't, not for a long while. 60 million years ago, in an attempt to combat the Necrons in Catan, the Old Ones made a new species. One with innate power in the warp and the ability to harness it with a mastery that was unseen by so many others. A mastery so powerful, the Necrons retreated to sleep in order to wait it out. It was no longer a galaxy to be ruled by them, but instead begin the age of the...
He's basically treating all of these intros like the title card for Invincible. Though I'm sorry, I mean it.
The Eldar are a race of pointed-eared humanoids that are all psychically attuned to the warp. If we're being meta here, these are space elves, and these elves ruled the galaxy in the time the Necrons went to sleep and humanity began to rise. The Eldar's empire was galaxy-wide and lasted for longer than any other galactic power that we know of. Their understanding of all things was exceptional. With every single one of them being psychers, they had the ability to master the warp and use it to their advantage. See, being a psyker is basically like being a wizard, or I guess in this case it's more of a sorcerer, since you are born with the gifts as opposed to learning them. In order to utilize your psychic abilities, however, you must then reach into the other dimension, into the warp, into hell for that power. So if you were to say, cast Fireball, your mind would reach into the warp, gather the strength to rewrite reality, to then cast Fireball. Now, you might think to yourself, doesn't that mean if you are opening up a power to the warp, you may create a lot of risk to yourself because of all the horrible things we just talked about in the warp?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
However, in Warhammer 40k, willpower is a real, tangible thing, in the sense that in its own right, it can be weaponized. Being strong of will means being strong of soul, and being strong of soul means you can resist the pull of the warp that much more. A more inexperienced psyker opens up a hole into the warp that is large, and that hole widens to get more power, allowing evil things to get in. A powerful psyker is able to open a very small hole, but with immense force to get the same amount of power with less risk. The
Exactly.
Eldar are master psychers. Every single one of them can call upon the warp, and over millions of years they have perfected it so much so that they can weave structures out of it. In some species in the galaxy, they utilize the warp itself for interstellar travel. The Eldar ain't having any of that noise.
Yep.
How about we utilize a fancy alternative mode of travel that is substantially safer than the old ones created called the webway? What about dying? Miss me with that. We no longer age. And if we do, we can just be reborn like that. Food, water, materials, we make things out of distilled warp essence itself. We sing unreality into cathedrals to dine in.
Basically, they had fabricators, anything like, yeah.
What truly could the Eldari Empire possibly fear? The Eldari Empire's biggest fear was themselves.
Yeah.
The society so perfect they wanted for naught, and this led them down dark and dangerous paths. When
Yes,
the
Bart.
base functions of society are no longer a problem for you, you tend to experiment. Perhaps the
Yeah.
medium rare steak on
And for those of you who are listening right now, experiment not in the way you think, and in the way you think.
your plate would be better if it was elf meat. Hey, I'm not saying we should make cannibalism legal, but like, what's the issue with a little taste? Violent sports is one thing, but how come we don't do sports to the death? I mean, I'm just saying, like, if both participants are willing and clear about it, like, what really is the problem there, you know? Art is in the eye of the viewer, and what is considered art is completely up to the concept of one's own interest. A canvas adorned with the blood of a man wronged is truly the visual poetry that our society needs. Hedonism, with a slow and consistent hedonism, the Eldar slid backwards into debauchery of the sort I cannot discuss on this YouTube video.
Yep.
Murder on stage, delicacies and drugs distilled from one another, the trade of slaves and concubines, and much worse. The Eldar physiology has their emotions heightened, and they can feel more than a human does. So while it can provide lows of pure despair, it can also provide greater highs than you have ever known.
Yeah.
And swinging between the two of them was the Eldar game. The warp took notice of this.
Yeah, it's like, of course, like you said, he cannot go into more details of what they did, but take every sort of entertainment you can ever imagine, and then stretch the definition of what you can do with that sort of entertainment, and what can be added onto it. It became horrifying, but also beautiful and ecstatic. It's just, and that's when this happened.
Heavily. And it began to react. On a galactic scale, the debauchery and the hedonism of the Eldar race caused levels of warp storm so pronounced and so volatile that it cut off interstellar travel for all those who used it. Communications between planets was removed, and a nightmarish era of Old Night began. This continued for thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years. All but removed from the problems being caused as they entered heights of more and more ecstasy. They needed more and more and more. Nothing was ever enough. More murder, more torture. It's art, it's delicacies, it's life. This silence offends Slaanesh.
The other Chaos God I completely forgot. Let me put it this way. The common joke in the Warhammer 40k fandom is that the Eldar murder gangbanged and Chaos God into existence. They partied way too hard.
Slaanesh, the prince of pleasure, she who thirsts, the god of unspeakable excess, is our fourth Chaos God with the sacred number of
God, Slaanesh imagery is somehow the most horrifying.
6 adorning their excess is our fourth Chaos God with the sacred number of 6 adorning their title. Slaanesh It's a bit of a tricky one, because with our other 3 Chaos Gods, there was a certain understanding of human emotions and desires, but for Slaanesh, that desire is how they get their power. The words to be used would be decadence, pleasure, perfection, passion, excess, and many others. The pursuit of more. The want to do more, experience more, become more. That's what gives Slaanesh their gifts. A lot of people believe that Slaanesh is something that originates with sex, specifically, and it makes sense why they assume that. The
Part of, but not entirely.
visuals of Slaanesh patrons are all very lithe and sexual, but they are also intentionally androgynous to appear attractive to a variety of intrigue.
Okay. This could not, like, this is funny to me just because I'm from Denmark. God damn it, Sweden.
However, to think that Slaanesh specifically derives from sex would be mistaken. While it is true that a lot of humanity's actions can relate to getting laid, and Slaanesh is the dark prince of desire, it's more on the lines of feeling an excess of an emotion.
Yes.
It is excessive touch and scent and desire, and a lot of that has to do with sex. That's why it looks like sex, but it's more than just that. A patron of the arts may feed Slaanesh.
Patron of the arts and showing fucking Funko Pops. Goddamn Funko Pops.
One that aspires to become the perfect chef or master of their craft, and the sheer pursuit of that alone will feed Slaanesh. Whiplash is Slaanesh's absolute favorite film. Videos where people beat Elden Ring on a dance pad feed Slaanesh.
Yes.
There are no 2 words in the English language more harmful than good job.
But is there a line?
No, man, no.
This also moves into the concept of feeling. Sensation is a majorly Slaanesh-coded thing. It might start off feeling good, but then you get to play around a little bit, you know? You play with a little bit of pain. Light pain might not be enough, so you might want more.
It's curiosity is Slaanesh's greatest weapon and greatest lore. That curious little voice in your mind that says, but what if? Why not?
More, or inflicting the pain could be your jam. Music can increase to volumes that may hurt your ears, and even then that might not be enough. More. You must have more.
The fact that some people can fall asleep to TV like snow or brown noise or just static, it's like, how?
Many of the disciples of Slaanesh carry a demonic form in their lithe grace. The Keeper of Secrets is his chosen envoy, and their movements are a blur of dance and pain, with an aura all the more fatal. They dance and sing, but there's always a form of malice behind every action they take. An alluring gaze that will pull you in right before the demonic entity can crush you in that grip. Slaanesh's palace has 6 layers surrounding it, and one of them is the excess of gluttony, where the participant finds themselves in a beautiful banquet full of the most delicious foods imaginable. Tables of delicacies and rivers of wine tempt the user to such a degree that they cannot stop stuffing their face, unaware that the things they are eating are very vaguely familiar meat. If one does not see themselves drowning in the river of wine, they may soon fill their bodies up so much that they cease to function and fall over, becoming part of the banquet themselves. That is one.
Sorry, I got completely distracted by tax feederism. I need to go back for that description.
Familiar meat. Rivers of wine tempt the user to such a degree that they cannot stop stuffing their face, unaware that the things they are eating are very vaguely familiar meat. If one does not see themselves drowning in the river of wine, they may soon fill their bodies up so much that they cease to function and fall over, becoming part of the banquet themselves. That is one of these 6 layers of Slaanesh's palace. This was the ecstasy that the Eldar civilization indulged in for millennia, and did so at a monumental scale that they created a god from it. Find pleasure in every moment, indulge in every whim, let lesser races feel the burden of their crude lives. We are beyond such concerns or worries. Every power is ours to use, every sensation ours to experience. We are truly masters of the galaxy, and all others exist only to satisfy our curiosities. We have earned our position of power. Let us forever taste the fruits of such achievement. Time itself is ours to command. We are eternal.
What a fucking place to pause. I was about to try and be all deep and serious and be like, yeah, Slaanesh may be the god of the Chaos Gods that I fear the most, but funnily enough, also accidentally, like, praise the most because I'm such a pursuit of getting better at my art. But then I just pause at this. The mood is ruined. Let's continue. Good fucking God.
With the birth of Slaanesh, the Eldari Empire ceased to be. A catastrophic event so horrible that the warp ripped a hole permanently in our reality, a fissure forever known as the Eye of Terror. With the sudden inhalation of this god's largest breath, the Eldari souls are a currency to be now collected by she who thirsts. Trillions of Eldar died in an instant, Slaanesh gorging on their souls to satisfy his palate. 99.9% of their entire species died, and the rest are doomed to a fate worse than death. For Slaanesh now stakes a claim on each and every Eldar soul. From the moment they pass on, an eternity of torment awaits them. The remaining Eldar devote their entire lives to stopping this eventuality. Their dying race so devoted to saving themselves from the Dark Prince, and in doing so, have found very creative ways. In the modern world of Warhammer, the craft world Eldar are the main force of Eldar in the galaxy and represent the elf style that many think of when you think elves in space. Fantasy elves in space, not those elves. We'll get to them. A craft world is a monumentally large starship, the size of a continent, that acts as a form of flotilla. During the highest reaches of hedonism, many Eldar saw the demonic writing on the wall and began to try and seek asylum from their own debauchery. Those Eldar left on monumental craft worlds into the far reaches of the galaxy and saved themselves from Slaanesh's awakening. The main thing the craft world Eldar seek is to temper their minds and bodies in a way that will never allow them to slide back into their old ways. The representation they carry is that of a more feudal Japanese motif. Eldar follow paths as they age, the path of the warrior, the seer, the poet, the diplomat, the bone singer, and so on. These paths are a strict code of
the bone singer. One of those things were not like the others.
Conduct to hone the heightened Eldar psychology down a school of thought and action. And if it sounds a hell of a lot like Bushido, well, you're damn right. Here's a medal and a soul stone. Don't lose it or an eternity of torment awaits you. Going through these paths will allow you to take up not just a role in Eldar society, but keep your mind clear from the past worries that plagued them. Every Eldar is said to be a psyker, however, very few of them actually utilize their psychic powers for fear of tempting she who thirsts. A large amount of emphasis is also put on ancestors of the Eldar and learning from them the farther you go down a path. This can sometimes be seen by the large variety of jewels adoring the armor of Eldar. Those are called soul stones.
I've always been fascinated, been a bit wondering about like the aesthetics and like armor designs of the Eldar, because look at this, and look at like their guns and everything. Like it's so weird and alien, which I guess fits, but like it's a very interesting like overall aesthetic and design.
the biggest middle finger to Slaanesh they can think of. See, when an Eldar dies, these stones act as a backup, and instead of their souls going to Slaanesh, they are then trapped and stored in this little stone. So when the Eldar say they commune with their ancestors, they mean so very literally, as the spirit and soul of generations before them are stored here. Often, larger structures may contain vast amounts of soul stones, such as the Infinity Circuit in the craft world itself, allowing the souls of the dead to help power their enormous starship. The young do not desire the discipline of the path, but rather their curiosity drives them to try every fruit from the tree. Thus, it is that so many take the path of wandering or the path of damnation in their first years of adulthood. And so, the great tragedy of our kind is played out again and again as the number of our people shrink from generation to generation.
Yeah.
These paths, when completed, allow an Eldar to move to the next one, then the next one. However, since this is the grim darkness of the world, many of these paths rely on combat. The Eldar actually had gods at one point.
They did.
Cain, Vol, Isha, Azaryan, and so on. These gods are aspects of the Eldar pantheon, and while many were killed in Slaanesh's creation, their teachings live on. For some, the strongest devotion to the Eldar gods is to join the Aspect Warriors and embody the wrath of Cain, their god of war. While guardians of the Eldar craft worlds are more akin to a trained militia, the Aspect Warriors embody a particular variant of the path. Each are led by a Phoenix Lord, a name passed down from generations and embodying the souls of prior Phoenix Lords with each new one. The Howling Banshees, led by Jane Zar, Fugin and his Fire Dragons, Baharoth and his Swooping Hawks, or Malgan Ra and his Dark Reapers.
Damn.
Each aspect shrine carries with it the Eldar way.
I don't know a lot about the Eldar, so this is actually very interesting to hear about, like, the different, I was about to say factions, but in different groups and such. That's really cool to learn about. And just how they morph the design of the Eldar into, like, the different things. It's really cool.
Of war. Fast, hard-hitting, and incredibly tricksy, for they do not have the numbers to fight in any other way. The Craftworld Eldar show how mangled an empire can be by their own actions. They once ruled the galaxy in an honest, non-hyperbolic way, but in the end, they were bested by themselves. And their most prominent remnants are forced to drift aimlessly through the galaxy, trying to save their species from extinction and resist the temptations of she who thirsts. But for some, the party, it's just beginning.
Oh boy!
Deep.
Oh boy, get ready for the, no joke, probably the most messed up of all the factions in 40k. Kind of a trigger warning if you are still here listening.
Within the webway is the city of Kamara. This dark city once existed as a port in the webway that allowed for ease of transport for the Eldar between its various domains. The significance of this city meant that it needed to be a bit more of a neutral territory outside of the jurisdiction of general Eldar law, and therefore it was allowed to self-govern. This did not go well. The dark city became the hideaway for all manner of sin. The Eldar race slipped into debauchery on a galactic scale that it birthed a god, and this was the city you went to when that wasn't enough for you. The convenience of being so deep within the webway was that it exists as a blind spot to the horrors of the warp. So while the rest of the Eldar fled the downfall of their species, Kamara kept partying. When Slaanesh was birthed, they were saved the worst of it, thanks to them being nice and neatly tucked away inside the webway.
Yeah.
But only somewhat. The Dark Prince did not have a grip around their soul, but the tiniest pinky finger, and they were still pulling. But due to their excess hedonism, they found a solution to this problem. If they tormented others, they could temporarily rejuvenate their souls and continue to cheat their inevitable death by placating the Prince of Pleasure. And if they kept this up on the regular, they could effectively become immortal. Thus, the Drukhari were born. Unlike the more stoic elves you see in works of fiction, the Drukhari themselves exist as a sort of analog of the more grim and fiendish elves you find in Norse and European mythology. The Drukhari are soul vampires, but the more basic means to feed are hardly enough to keep them going. This desire to feed is known as the thirst, and to quench it effectively, they have mastered the art of biotechnology and dark sciences to really juice themselves up on the crispy soul sprite from the vending machine called the Galaxy. The majority of Drukhari act as pirates and raiders and slavers. They go into our physical reality and drag people back to Kamara to commit atrocities that go beyond any imaginative torture a human can think of. The Drukhari are organized in various groups throughout the Dark City to accomplish this in a more organized and extremely brutal way. The Cabals act as the main warriors of the city, led by their archons. Witches and succubi act as entertainment for Kamara in gladiatorial arenas, and the flesh-crafting homunculus keep the Drukhari alive and discover ever-increasingly more painful ways to torment their ever-increasingly large supply of slaves they are brought. The Dark Eldar see the other inhabitants of the galaxy as little more than cattle, livestock that can be brought to bay or slaughtered at any time. Their fodder, however, is not meat and muscle, but the anguish and despair of the weak. The Dark Eldar do indeed drink blood, but also tears, and most sustaining of all, the raw essence of pain they wring out of their captives. The truth of the matter is that Drukhari sustain themselves on the suffering of others, not just morally, but physically. Kamara is a city rife with backstabbing schemes and murder. It is the worst back alleys of the worst ghettos at the best of times. Nothing is more horrifying to a Drukhari than death, for death will see them in the talons of Slaanesh for an eternity of torment. So they do everything they can to stop this. The homunculi covens regrow dead members from pieces of flesh as bargaining chips. The succubi create grisly gladiatorial spectacles that literally rejuvenate the audience members as captives are murdered for sport. To be captured by the Drukhari is one of, if not the worst fate imaginable in the world of Warhammer 40k. In a universe built on war crimes, they are the most debased war crimers of all time. To be tortured and sacrificed in the gladiatorial arenas is a blessing, for you have escaped the fate of being in the flesh smith's control group, or being turned into a living and breathing piece of furniture for an Archon's quarters. In a cruel twist of fate, a newly born Drukhari does not arrive into this world loving torture. It is something they must grow to love. Grow to appreciate the suffering of other beings in order to survive in the world they have been brought into. If they succeed, they become some of the worst monsters in the known galaxy, a dark reflection to the Craftworlders and a taste of what Eldar society was like before the fall. If they do not succeed, they must find purchase elsewhere. Often those will join smaller parts of Eldar society like the Exodites or the Harlequins. Exodites believe in a pre-industrial variant of their society, often retreating to more lush worlds to ride dinosaurs and live off the land. Prehistoric style that I would normally laugh at if they weren't riding dinosaurs like ballers.
That is
ballers.
Going back real quick. Come on, go back. I had not heard of the Exodites before. That is really cool. Look at that armor design. That helmet, the dinosaur, the fucking dinosaur. That is really cool. I have not really heard of the Exodites before. I'm still learning new stuff. Wonderful.
The Harlequin dancing troupe are a subsect of Eldar that are more than just a little strange. A carnival of dancing jesters that serve the Eldar laughing god of Kegarak. They arrive never when expected and leave just as quickly. Blurs of light carry their footsteps as they dance their foes into a grave. Combat is just as much of a joke as it is a play on bloody murder. They travel and aid many other Eldar and sometimes even humanity for reasons we can never understand. Perhaps one day we would have, were they not stripped of their army book and folded into the Eldari Codex.
Oh, really?
So I suppose it'll have to stay a mystery, or...
Oh no, because they did used to be like their own mini faction, but they have basically been erased as their own. Oh no.
Maybe it was one of Kegarak's master plans to get back at She Who Thirsts and save their species.
I'm so sorry to all Harlequin players out there.
Who could know? Perhaps it was all a sick and practical joke to Kegorok, and he would just find it very funny to watch me fumble the discussion of one human on a tiny blue planet across the galaxy.
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of.
But now we're talking about the Imperium.
Before the fall of the Eldar, Earth, or Terra, as it's called, was in ruin. One man who looks to put the pieces back together. Where did he come from? We don't know. Some say he was the result of early shamans. Some say he is the final Old One who escaped their species' genocide. And those that are smartest know the answer is, it doesn't matter. He revealed himself as basically the Emperor.
It really, it really doesn't matter. I guess it really doesn't. I guess it really doesn't matter where it was that the Emperor came from, because that is not the point of his story.
Of mankind, and he was tasked with the most monumental upheaval of humanity possible. The Eldari's warp fluctuations had turned the golden age of humanity into old night. Interstellar travel cut off? Check. An AI uprising? Check. Brand new psychers popping up and not knowing how to handle their powers? Oh, check. Demonic incursions? Check. Thousands of years this occurred, and now the Emperor of Mankind showed himself to put the pieces back together. Unifying Terra under his rule, the Emperor founded the Imperium of Man and ruled it with an iron fist. He was the supreme leader, and nothing could stand against him. He wished to remove mankind from the yoke of its former failures, and he knew he would be the best leader they could have because he was right. AI banned. Religion banned. You did as the Emperor told you, or his Thunder Warriors would put you in your place. That place often being a grave.
Yeah.
Now, Terra was thriving, but humanity needed to reclaim its long-lost brethren scattered across the stars. But to do so, he needed those that could build him a fleet truly meant for the reconquering of the galaxy. And so he turned his attention to the red planet of Mars.
If I didn't collect Necron, I would collect orcs. But if I didn't collect orcs, I would probably collect the Adeptus Mechanicus, because they're just so goddamn cool in design and concepts. Oh. Why did the chat not... Salty Boy, I could only see that you wrote stuff on OBS, but apparently in the chat I didn't see what you wrote. That sucks. So I can't even see what it was you said.
Mars and Terra were close allies long before the Unification Wars. Mars was the first world terraformed by humanity and became what would ultimately be the first hive world, an epicenter for industry and technology. The Age of Strife did not treat the Red Planet kindly, however. Mars was cut off from Terra during this time, and the warp storms that ravaged the planet turned it into an absolute nuclear hellscape. Those who were on the surface were turned into your run-of-the-mill mutant if they even survived the bombings they inflicted on themselves, but others were lucky enough to escape beneath the red sands in powerful fallout shelters. These became their generational habitats, but this resulted in extreme reliance on technology and those who could use it. They began to view the technology keeping them alive less as a technological advancement and more of a divine intervention, with those skilled in it as priests. The Martians began to worship the power of the machine, and this resulted in the formation of the Cult Mechanicus, the belief in a holy trinity known as the Three-in-One. The machine god, serving as the spirit who gave rise to all technologies known, the motive force, the deity that gives all life its ability to live, and the Omnissiah, a physical manifestation of the machine god itself. This belief began to manifest in them physically as well. What were once humans began to really mess around with the character creator options, and this tech obsession made them view instances of flesh to be weak and spend their lives removing what makes them human and replacing it with mechanical augments.
The moment I realized the weakness of my flesh, It disgusted me.
Robotic limbs, glowing eyes, mechadendrite arms. What was once a mass of flesh now looks like the back of a router. And the oldest members of the Mechanicus no longer even look slightly human. In addition to this, cloaked over all of their mechanical appendages are robes that reflect the color of their homeworld, the red robes of the Mechanicus. The Cult Mechanicum, now the Adeptus Mechanicus,
Look at that. Like, the Mechanicus' entire style is so goddamn cool. I would never be able to paint their models because, goddamn, the amount of detail on those son of a bitches is... Bleh. But their entire style just so goddamn cool.
Create a fascinating combination of cultures all birthed into one. Basically, techno-zealot monks. Organic life is the machine god's greatest accomplishment within the scope of the great work. All praise he who is 3 in 1. By giving us life within an organic shell, he presents us with the means and opportunity to improve upon physicality, as is his divine plan. He grants us complex weakness so we might learn metallic strength and ascend to his level of machinic perfection.
Kind of reminds me of the Christian thing of like that we're all born with sin. Kind of gives me that sort of vibe. We're all born with sin and therefore we shall work throughout life to become pure again. Kind of the same train of thought here.
The Emperor's arrival to Mars was very much a walking in with the pizzas while the room is on fire moment, but to the Mechanicum, they saw his arrival as confirmation of their belief. They took one look at the glowing golden entity that showed up on their doorstep and were like, that's him.
Yep.
That's the guy right there.
Yep.
And they immediately accepted him as the Omnissiah. Obviously, showing up and being called Machine Jesus shortly after wiping out all instances of non-Machine Jesus a little bit beforehand is an instance of capital H heresy. But the Emperor saw the bigger picture. Were they strange with how they rubbed unguents on themselves, burned incense, and prayed to machines for them to work? Sure, but
Look. I don't know how, I don't want to, I'm not going to say how many times I've prayed for my PC to function well enough for stuff to work, for my phone to not die, and many things. I'm not going to say how much I've done it. I'm just going to say, I get it.
But that's a lot of production right there. So the Emperor devised the Treaty of Olympus Mons, a unifying agreement between Terra and Mars. And this union would be permanently etched into the Aquila of the Imperium as the two-headed eagle. One head for Terra, and the other for Mars. The forces of the Emperor would be supplied with all the technology and weapons they needed to reunite the scattered remnants of humanity under one banner. And the Mechanicum of Mars would be able to keep doing what they were doing religiously and scientifically, so long as they kept up their tithes. This tithe meant total quality control over all technology in the Imperium. Is it a big spaceship? AdMech take care of that. Tanks? AdMech take care of that. The literal bullets in a gun? You guessed it. But unlike the factories of today, the forge worlds of Mars and the creations of the Mechanicum are a bit of a different experience altogether. Instead of a factory on a random given world, the entirety of the planet's surface is dedicated to manufacturing. But that's a little tricky, isn't it? Considering that the usage of silica animus, or AI, is a big no-no, and basically the largest affront to their divine machine god possible. Fortunately,
God, that is disturbing. I'm totally distracted by, oh my god. The rock eating rocks.
there's a really neat alternative that they've come up with. And that's called a servitor. Incredible devices that can do anything from manufacturing, maintenance, basic door operation, even just float around like a helpful little drone. It's an extremely easy process too. All you need to do is take a human who is dying or preferably an enemy of the state, most likely that one, and lobotomize them. And then reprogram their brains to do exactly what they tell you. They even got little baby versions of them. Yay! So now you can rest easy knowing that the entirety of the Imperium, because they outlaw AI and learning new tech is heresy, is run on lobotomized slaves. Whether they deserve it or not is
Grim Dark War Universe. Yay!
Important, and whether they can still keep their consciousness trapped in their own minds is another thing entirely.
Yeah, some of them may or may not be conscious about their situation and aware. They just need a bit of rebooting, it's fine.
Your incompetence is showing.
An excerpt from the Servitor Creation Factories.
Oh no!
Naked human beings were standing in a switch-packed line between high fences. The manufactorum produced servitors, but it was more akin to an abattoir than a workshop. Every surface was easily cleanable. Servitors with spray units surgically attached to their backs prowled about, hosing filth from slit drains set into the perfectly smooth, slanted floors. As the line slowly advanced, the people were passed through various scanning devices, most of them mounted in ugly, functional arches that let out a constant series of acceptance chimes. Occasionally, one would let out an angry blare, and the indicator lumens would flash red. The rejected person was then swallowed up by a trapdoor opening beneath their feet. From these pits wafted a hideous stench and the grinding sounds of industrial mincers. One rejected man grabbed onto the lip and hung there, arms and hands bloodied, shouting a stream of defiant profanities. Guards lined the grating either side of him and shocked him until he fell. The adepts wouldn't even waste bullets on these people. The trapdoor flipped up, and the next terrified person was ushered forward. Violet metal arms snatched them up and spread-eagled them in the air, and a servitor shearer shaved them all over. At another, they were subjected to a high-pressure counterseptic wash whose...
I just want to point out, he didn't go into the details about the Eldar and their murder game banging, or the Dark Eldar and their shenanigans, but he's going into detail about the servitors.
Chemical stink made me choke from 100 feet away. More scanners, more rejects winnowed out. Machines forcibly dressed them in a heavy rubberized garment common to all monotask servitors. These were saggy on them, all one size, until another process force-shrank them to fit their bodies, where metal cuffs, sockets, and collars bit into vulnerable flesh. The last few prayers gave way to screams at that point, and even the most stoic shouted in pain. They were ushered over a floor, buzzing with power that made them shriek with every footstep. "What's that for?" I asked. "Follicular inhibitor, to stop their hair from growing," he said. "Freaking sweet, Lois!" As for their scientific
oh yeah, Lois. Oh sweet. Man-made horrors beyond comprehension.
Suits, the Mechanicum believe in the preservation of knowledge above all, and the quest to expand it. However, as opposed to just innovating and inventing on their own with their vast technological know-how, they believe that it is a form of tech heresy. You see, because of their religious viewpoints on technology itself, they believe that the instruction booklet itself is just as holy as the Lego.
Susie, I heard recently that Netflix put out a Dante VTuber. That's all I'm willing to say about that.
Set it builds, and to innovate on that without the proper written knowledge is to go against the divine word of the machine god itself. All knowledge is already in the universe. You simply need to rediscovering it and attempting to invent something to improve upon divinity is very heretical. Prior to the Age of Strife, humanity was able to populate the stars with devices known as Standard Template Constructs, or STCs. These devices were, as far as we know, supercomputers with the ability to pull up and detail how to create literally anything a startup colony would need. Essentially, they were devices with the entirety of human technological know-how so that you could make a home away from home. The Mechanicum will not make anything without an STC. Quite literally nothing, because this is the knowledge they seek, and that knowledge is divine. One time, scouts of the Imperial Guard found a functioning STC that provided the schematics on a knife that happened to be a bit lighter and a bit sharper than most other knives. These knives were adopted by 30 Space Marine chapters and were one of the most advanced discoveries of the century. This discovery was so significant.
Also, the goddamn Iron Decker smithing spam in the background gives me flashbacks to when I played Skyrim. Goddamn.
That they were each awarded a planet for finding this. a planet for a machine that taught them how to make knives.
Wow.
Due to their religious organization, you can probably guess the Mechanicum are organized in a feudal structure with the highest individuals in power being a part of the priesthood. Cream of the crop being the fabricator general of Mars itself, who serves as a high lord of Terra, but also oversees the entirety of the Mechanicum below. Below them are tech priests that oversee the cult for the quest of knowledge and other more straightforward theocracy. Forge worlds tend to operate slightly more independently, what can cause some power struggles within the Mechanicum, because, you know, despite them all being weird robots, they love being given praise. And despite being the manufacturing end of the Imperium, they do actually have their own military forces. They have the Skitarii Private Army and all their various 1920s Martian-style mechanisms like Doom Crawlers, Castellan robots, and of course, the Titan Legions. Because nothing is cooler than a robot that towers over buildings.
No, Bricky. Nothing that, yeah. A robot that towers over buildings. Titans are buildings with legs and guns. They are walking, like, heretic be talking smack until the cathedral suddenly stands up and shoots at them.
Ultimately, their very dogmatic view on technology as a whole has resulted in any innovation becoming absent, thus causing the Imperium to stagnate as a whole. The lack of ambition to create anything new and the wholesale murder of anyone who even tries leads to things becoming derelict.
Yeah.
I grow weary of this flesh I was born into, strangely disgusted by its nature. I crave only the cold, clean certainty of steel and silicon, that I might become one with the blessed machine. I do not expect you to understand, you who cling to your flesh as if it were immortal, seeking only to preserve it, to protect it. One day you will see the folly of your ways, and then no doubt you will come begging to my order to preserve you. After the groundwork had been set unification-wise, it was time to start getting things together for the Emperor's great crusade across the stars to bring humanity under one banner. The Thunder Warriors were a perfect fighting force for unifying Terra and Luna, but the galaxy was a whole different thing. You see, these warriors weren't soldiers in the eyes of the Emperor. They were tools, extremely blunt tools used for the fast conquest of Terra. As the Emperor was concerned, the tools you use at home aren't the same ones you take on a road trip. So the Emperor rid himself of his tools in the exact manner you think he did, and he went forward to crafting a brand new tool. One more mobile, more efficient, and ready for his next era of conquest. They shall be my finest warriors, these men who give of themselves to me. Like clay, I shall mold them, and in the furnace of war forge them. They will be of iron will and steely muscle. In great armor shall I clad them, and with the mightiest guns will they be armed. They will be untouched by plague or disease. No sickness will blight them. They will have tactics, strategies, and machines so that no foe can best them in battle. They will be my bulwark against the terror. They are the defenders of humanity. They are my soul.
Space Marine. Now, I wonder if he's going to, well, attempt and go through the different legions, or if he's just going to gloss over them, because he has an entire video about the different Space Marine legions. So it's just we're gonna gloss over them, I guess.
And they shall know no fear. The vastness of the Milky Way galaxy meant that the Emperor needed assistance bringing everyone back to the fold. And who better to do this than himself? But since the technology to be in many places at once does not exist anymore, the Emperor decided that it was time to become a dad, the same way Geppetto did, and with far less care. It is not my son, Archon. None of them are. They are warlords, generals, tools bred to serve a purpose, just as legions were bred to serve a purpose.
Which is
what a dad.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, one thing I do know about the many different books of Warhammer 40k is that some things are like not like mischaracterized, but just shown in different ways. Like, I've heard that in some books the Emperor does think about the Primarchs in this manner. They're just tools, they're just weapons, they're just generals. But then there are apparently other stories where he legit cares for them as his sons. So it's like, like, if you look at the overall picture, you never quite know what the Emperor thinks. Like, some things you know for certain, but stuff like the Primarchs, what he thinks of the Primarchs, not really sure. But the main, like, the main line of thinking is tools.
Primarch project was started to create charismatic and unique leaders in the Imperial military. The diversity of these eventual leaders meant that each one could be specialized for certain circumstances across the galaxy. Depending on the type of conflict, one leader might be better than the other. So instead of forcing one leader to acclimate to a situation directly, it would be better to send a specialized leader and force to handle it. In order to do this, the Emperor used his genetic know-how and maybe a little bit of that forbidden stuff to create these genetically perfect gene fathers that had the ability to serve as his analog directly, and also serve as the leaders of the respective Space Marine legions. All 20, all 18, that's right, all 19 of his sons were meant to
19 because one of the Primarchs are twins.
Be directly molded by the Emperor himself despite their genetic differences. And they go as follows in order. Lionel Johnson, Fulgrim, Percherabo, Jagatai Khan.
The fucking Pokemon rap, really?
Lehman Russ, Rogel Dorn, Conrad Kurz, Sanguinius, Ferris Manus, Angron, Robute Gilliman, Mortarion, Magnus the Red, Horus Lupercal, Lorgar Aurelian, Vulcan, Corvus Corax, and Alfarius and Omegon. His sons, finalized and crafted to be the warriors he needed them to be, were complete. But he may have decided to do a bit of dabbling with things he shouldn't have, and paid.
They are truly, some of the, like, they are names. They are names. What can I say, Susie?
The price. Before the Primarchs were ready to go, an intervention by the gods of chaos prevented his plan from being completed as intended. Though the sources vary, the ultimate result of the Chaos God intervention was that all of the Emperor's tools were scattered throughout the galaxy at unknown places and times. Each one of his sons ended up in a completely different world, and instead of being able to directly influence their upbringing, these children were instead forced to experience the unique nature of their respective homeworlds. Some had a great time and lived in general luxury. Others, not so much. Yeah. Despite his closest advisor, Malkador the Sigillite, saying, "All right, Chief, let's try this one again," the Emperor sensed each of his sons were still very much alive. And one of the primary objectives of the Great Crusade shifted to reclaiming each of his sons so they could take command of their specific Space Marine legions and carry out his will. These original Space Marine legions that were created alongside their Primarchs go in order: the Dark Angels, Emperor's Children, Iron Warriors, White Scars, Space Wolves, Imperial Fists, Night Lords, Blood Angels, Iron Hands, World Eaters, Ultramarines, Death Guard, Thousand Sons, Luna Wolves, eventually Sons of Horus, the Word Bearers, Salamanders, Raven Guard, and the Alpha Legion. Space Marines, unlike their gene fathers, the Primarchs, are not made in a vat. There is a process to recruit more members from humanity itself, which seems a bit strange considering how massive a Space Marine is compared to a normal man, but don't forget, the Emperor is really good with genetics. Less good with anesthetic, however. These prospects are recruited across humanity from various reasons and methods, and are generally killed during that process. But sometimes they aren't, and they are able to go through more and more of the actual training to assess certain traits that are important and relevant to being a Space Marine. Most of the time, the common factor is a pure, unrelenting willingness to kill the enemies of the Imperium. After going through psychological screening, the prospect, now called a neophyte, goes—
Oh, that what you saw there was a Tyrannid, more specifically a Tyrannid warrior, the Space Bugs.
Under the knife to become a Space Marine. Unrelenting willingness to kill the enemies of the Imperium. After going through psychological screening, the prospect, now called a neophyte, goes under the knife to become a Space Marine. And here is a quick list of all the cool new stuff they get genuinely shoved into their body.
Oh yeah, the Space Marines, as part of their, like, operation to become a Space Marine, they gain many interesting new organs and abilities with them. He's gonna go through them.
eyes, a secondary heart, an organ that makes your bones grow, an organ that makes your muscles big, an implant that makes your blood stronger, a little organ that turns your white blood cells into super white blood cells, a brain implant that allows you to sleep while being awake, a pre-stomach that allows you to digest literally anything, a spinal implant that allows you to absorb the genetic memories of what you eat, bigger and better lungs that can let you breathe underwater, an implant that gives you stronger eyes, new ears that keep you from being dizzy, a brain implant that lets you go into suspended animation if you're in a bad shape, skin that acts like transition glasses, I almost got it in one take, a brand new kidney, the ability to taste the air and find enemies like a bloodhound, a special coating on your skin that allows you to be protected in space, the ability to spit acid, a gland that allows you to absorb the unique genetic makeup from the gene seed in the first place, and a straight up carapace that allows the Space Marine to interface with their power armor directly. Quite often, these are put inside of you at dubious levels of mental alertness and dubious levels of anesthetic. After a more generalized indoctrination into the faith of the Imperium and a bit more training and other important.
And most of the times when like an initiate tries to become a Space Marine, many of them die on the operating table. That's where many of them die.
They can finally be welcomed as a fully fledged Space Marine. A Space Marine is quite literally a walking tank that is armed to the teeth. Two of the more iconic weapons held by a Space Marine are their bolt gun, which fires explosive shells the size of soda cans, and a chain sword, which is... The Space Marine is clad in a colorful carapace known as power armor, crafted from extremely heavy and durable ceramite. The power armor of a Space Marine protects him from any terrors he may face, be it the void of space itself to an inhospitable atmosphere. This armor, combined almost biologically with an already massive physique, makes the Space Marine an almost unstoppable fighting force. And hell, if the armor doesn't protect them enough, they can always become a walking coffin like the dreadnoughts of the chapters are. What truly adds to it all, however, is the sheer difference in some of them. While a Space Marine in its own right is an indoctrinated freight train on legs, how they act can be quite different from chapter to chapter. The gene seed of a Primarch is not just helping them become big and strong, but allows them to gain certain traits from their forefathers. Everything from how they think to even slightly adjusting their physical appearance once it's been implanted, the gene seed can be the personality of an entire Space Marine. Take the Salamanders, for example. Salamanders have a predisposition to fire as a whole, and tend to be extremely large due to the size of their Primarch, Vulcan, and his enormous stature. Whereas someone like Sanguinius, Primarch of the Blood Angels, share more vampiric features and more angel-like qualities. A gene seed is not just aspects of the Primarchs, but they are also flaws too. Magnus the Red and his 1,000 Sons underwent something known as the Flesh Change, a horrifying mutation that, while it made them strong psychers, would affect their bodies so terribly that they would mutate away from humanity. Where other factions have inspiration for their culture from our real world, like the feudal Japanese of the Eldar or Egyptian style the Necrons, each Space Marine chapter themselves carry an inspiration. The White Scars are motorcycle riding Mongolian fighters. The Space Wolves are Norse Vikings. The Dark Angels are Knights of the Round Table, and so on. This moves into their fighting style, and truthfully, there is no end to the characters and options when it comes to the Space Marines.
Fucking orc mechs. I'm sorry, but
those are Knights of the Round Table.
I'm sorry, I want to pause at this.
This moves into their fighting style, and truthfully, there is no end.
Look at these goofy ass fucking
characters.
For those of the uninitiated, these are the orcish killer cans. Orcs attempt at making mechs. Look at that goofy ass things.
And options when it comes to the Space Marines. Space Marines are the main symbol you see, and while many of them can be simply indoctrinated warriors who only care about conflict and can be quite boring, then you meet Dante, or Bjorn, or Argel Tal, or Karn, or Lucius, or Erebus. And then you discover the wealth of these characters and tools of war you can have. For 1100 years, I have fought and I have seen the darkness in our galaxy. I have seen the vileness of the alien and the heresy of the mutant. I have witnessed the sin of possession, and I have seen all the evil that the galaxy harbors, and I have slain all whose presence defiles the Emperor. I have seen what you will see. I have fought what you must fight, and I have slain what you must slay. So fear not and be proud, for we are the sons of Sanguinius, the protectors of mankind. We are indeed the angels of death. Despite being the poster children for Warhammer 40k as a whole, the presence of a Space Marine is a rare sight for the countless trillions of humans across the galaxy. Seeing one of these monstrosities is like seeing something akin to an angel sent by the Emperor himself. These angels of death are the essential fighting force to bring humanity back under the unified banner of the Imperium.
Basically, if you're part of the Imperial Guard and you see Space Marines arriving, it's both a very good and a very bad thing. Good because, yay! The Space Marines, the Emperor's Angels, has come to save us. Hello, guy, I'm about to fucking, Susie? Susie, can you take care of that, please? If you're still here. Thank you kindly, Susie. Good moderator. But yeah, it's very good. But like, yes, the Emperor's Angels have come to save us, but it's bad because what are we facing that the Emperor's Angels has to come to save us? Like, what are we exactly fighting that the Space Marines are here?
Yet ultimately, the Space Marines are individuals torn from their families and conscripted to genetic modification and lifelong service for the dying Imperium. And though they are held in an almost holy light, most believe they are above and beyond the people they are designed to serve. Once designed as the protectors of humanity, they seldom view humanity as something worth saving, to the extent that it is a tiny, minute rarity, though not unheard of, for a Space Marine to put a normal citizen above them in any way. For most Space Marines and even their Primarchs, they are only here to do a job. They are there to kill the enemies of humanity, and I would be remiss if I didn't add at least one more of my favorite quotes to the tail end of this section. "The time for speeches is done," said Rogel Dorm. "The first great test is here. My order to you all is simple, yet heed it well, and exert yourselves to see it done. They are coming. Kill them all."
Yeah.
Well, the Space...
And again, for context, this is Rogel Dorn of the Imperial Fists. Imagine an entire military branch, like Space Marines, but also dedicated to be construction workers. They're all about fortification, building the walls, and keeps off humanity. If they find a spot to defend, it's not impossible to breach them. And Rogel Dorn is a man of few words and plenty of action. He is blunt as a rock. He almost never laughs. He never lies. And again, he's a man of simple words. And this was like at the height of the Horus Heresy, where he was just facing the last defenders of Terra, like, these are my orders. They are coming. Kill them all, which is so just fucking cool. Sorry.
Marines are the spearhead of the Imperium's Great Crusade and also a major player in its warfare. There is a significant amount of importance that must be taken on their transport. What sci-fi universe would be complete without its navy? When you think of the navy or ships on the open sea, you think of something that is sleek, something mobile, and something pretty big. For perspective, the longest self-propelled ship in history was the TTC-Wise Giant, an oil tanker that was about 458 meters long or over about 1,500 feet.
Damn.
This right here is child's play in the world of 40k ships.
Of course
a ship that is considered to be an escort vessel in the Imperium is about 3 times the size of a Sea-Wise Giant, and the size of the ships only go up from there. Your most common ships are the cruisers. The light cruiser tends to average at about 2 kilometers long, or just over a mile in length, where the Dictator class cruisers can be over 3 kilometers or 2 miles in length. The largest ships are your battleships, and they are tremendous. We're talking 5-mile long, half a mile high monstrosities that look like gigantic Gothic cathedrals and filled to the brim with weaponry. And not only are they filled with weapons, but they are also jam-packed with crewmen. Battleships tend to, on average, carry a crew between several thousand to several million, and they need every single one of those members because we don't have advanced technology for other things to pilot themselves or control themselves in a meaningful way because there's no AI. A lot of this stuff has to be done manually. Even the reloading of those giant batteries is a form of manual labor. And, of course, generally speaking, gliding through the stars is a very slow way.
Life on those ships is crazy too. Like, there will be family lineages who have the entire job speed lighting candles. Yeah. It's insane.
Way to do things. And let's be honest, there can't be a science fiction setting without some form of hyperspace travel. This form of travel in 40k is less like going to Plaid in Spaceballs and more like going into Davy Jones' zipper dimension in SpongeBob.
Oh, now what? I suppose you're gonna show me. Oh, gee, that's very nice. Oh, what is this? Some kind of magic act?
Also, good work, Susie.
This is because it utilizes the immaterial warp to do so. Warp travel is handled by a navigator, which is an abhuman. It's a mutated human, don't worry about it. And they have a gene that's handled by a navigator, which is an abhuman. It's a mutated.
Everything was on Google Images, just furry art on cat girls. Yes, there's
human, don't worry about it. And they have a gene that gives them a third eye and the ability to help steer the ship through the warp, which, as we know, is hell itself and unreality. Now, this might sound exceptionally dangerous, and that's because it is. Now, the ship does have protection in the form of a Geller field, though. Originally, I assumed the Geller field is what you think it is, a large force field stopping all manner of horrible things, like demons from the warp tearing apart your ship. How wrong I was, though. So space travel through the warp basically involves riding on the Sea of Souls. Hell is real and you can surf on it. So you allow the current to carry you and the navigator to direct. But how can a current of souls and unreality carry you when it doesn't obey the laws of physics, time, or, again, reality? What a Geller field is not a force field. But a comatose Imperial psyker dreaming of reality. It is not a bubble. It is a force of reality being projected by mutant Sleeping Beauty to counteract the unreality of the warp that you can then surf on. This, of course, is not a foolproof method of travel, and Geller fields can and do collapse fairly regularly.
I had no idea it worked like that because, like he said, I thought it was just like a generator projecting like a shield around the ship while they're in the warp to prevent warp shenanigans. I had no idea it was... What?
Being subjected to the warp itself without this Geller field is a terrifying prospect. In the best case scenario, your ship will be torn to shreds. But there are countless instances of ships being thrown out of the warp randomly throughout time itself. You leave for a 2-day mission and you come back 90 years in the past. Maybe you feel like you're lost in the warp for a century and it's only been 45 minutes. And that is only if the waves of souls don't rip your ship apart or have demons arrive on it to do unspeakable things to the crew. The Imperial Navy is an astronomically powerful force for the Imperium because the sheer volume of ships and guns on those ships create firepower that can sunder planets. This is all juxtaposed with the sheer backwater nature of these ships. While they are manned by crews of zealots, they are also operated with such a backwater tech, it completely confuses the reader. You see the long batteries of portside cannons that the ship has, and remember that AI is heresy in this world and that all the mechanics are utilized by lobotomized slaves. So how do they load these? Well, they have gun gangs, massive gangs of hundreds of people manually loading these cannons. These are genuine gun loader gangs that get into gang wars and squabbles. On the ship's bridge, you may find the captain himself hardwired directly into the ship's chair permanently to control it the best they can. Giant screens of hololith data fill the room, and sensors across the ship are just as likely to tell you information as a serf running up to you with a scroll of parchment is. You reach to a microphone to shout orders down a hallway as paper readouts tell you information of the enemy, and holy sigils and candlelit incense burners gleam your next move. While the
bit of a jump scare there, but What? Have these people never heard of like an autoloader? Like automized, like automatic loading? Like it doesn't even have to include AI, just like a machine that loads the gun. Wow, he was not kidding about how backwater these people are. That would be innovation. That's the fact that that would be an innovation is madness. That would be tech heresy. Like, they have to find the STC of an auto loader, of an automatic like loading mechanism for these ships before they can unlock. Again, it just shows how incredibly insane and backwards thinking the Imperium can be.
Faction of the Imperium. In the same sense and format of this video, it is is not a specific faction of the Imperium. In the same sense and format of this video, it is what shepherds around the entirety of its armed forces. Every Space Marine Primarch had a flagship, and every strike cruiser and battle barge has a story to tell. But if there is a single thing that the Shield of the Navy does the best, it is to help support and supply the monumental forces of the Imperium, the hammer of the Emperor himself, the uncountable men and women of the
Imperial Guard.
I don't care if these things have adapted to resist our las guns. If we can't kill them with our rifles, then we'll kill them with heavy bolters. And if we can't kill them with heavy weapons, we'll use grenades. And if grenades don't work, then we'll fight them with our swords and our knives and our bare hands. We'll drown them in our blood. That's what it means to be a soldier of the Imperial Guard.
Yep.
Now follow me. Charge! There is no better symbol of the might of the Imperium itself than the Astra Militarum, or as it is commonly known, the Imperial Guard. Though the Space Marines take the glory and stand as the visual representation of the Imperium, their numbers are dramatically thin and specialized in comparison. To reclaim 1,000,000 worlds, you need a countless number of troops willing to fight and die for your cause. The Imperial Guard represents the Imperial truth made manifest. Every year, the worlds of the Imperium pay a tithe in the form of soldiers to fight the good fight of the Emperor, and this number is impossible to pin down. Even saying billions would be a dramatic understatement. The sheer volume of soldiers serves as the fundamental backbone of the Imperium. 99.9% of battles fought by the Imperium are fought by the sundering might of the Imperial Guard. With the knowledge that the Space Marines are essentially sentient tanks, what do the members of the Imperial Guard have? If they're the might of the Emperor himself, are they not suited up in a similar way? No, not really. No fancy suits, no biological enhancements, and basically no expectation to live. Once a regiment of Guard are activated, they are sent directly into battle with almost no expectations that they will survive. This is because, despite their training, their incredibly powerful armor, and extremely strong weapons that would—
That's completely fine, Susie. Yes, and thank you so much for being here and being a good moderator. You have a good night, Suze. See ya.
Crush any army of the modern day, they are so hopelessly outmatched to the things they will face. Sending a member of the Guard is throwing a rock at a nuclear bomb. However, where they lack in advancement, they make up for in sheer numbers, and their overwhelming force can be the difference maker in any deployment they face. Quantity is a quality all its own. If they do happen to survive, they will be sent to the next battle, and so on. Seldom do members of the Astra Militarum get old or retire, and those that do are truly to be feared. There's an old saying that the average lifespan of a guardsman is about 15 hours from deployment, and considering the sheer number of guardsmen out there in any given battle, that number is probably accurate. When several million of your pool of guardsmen die within the first few hours of combat because the orcs threw a moon at you, it can really screw the numbers. The soldiers—
Yeah, that's something orcs can do. They basically find it. They strap a bunch of rockets to a moon, make it crash. Orcs are wonderful.
Of the Guard are conscripted and trained on an incredible number of worlds in the Imperium, and these worlds can impact their training and their combat style directly. The most famous visually are the Cadian shock troops, But other notable Guard factions include the gas mask-clad Death Corps of Krieg, the Rambo level of Catachan Jungle Fighters, and the iron-willed Mordian Iron Guard. This also helps them specialize against individual types of enemies. The Indigan Prefects are a special guard regiment that came from a planet whose planetary governor, the leader of the planet, thought it was fun to collect exotic animals, which then crossbreed and then became the giant freight train-sized monsters destroying the planet. So the Indigan Prefects are specialized for big monsters. Hello, Tyranids. One particularly interesting officer in the Guard is the enforcement officer known as the Commissar, and they are one of the more visually striking members of a regiment. These are specialized Imperial officers and act as morale officers. But instead of singing songs to the troops and providing hot meals, the Commissars are there to make sure that the members of the regiment continue to fight to the bitter end. If a soldier does not meet the standards of the Commissar, the solution is simple. There are trillions of other soldiers out there. We don't really need you. Combat fatigue? Headshot. Concerns about the conflict? Headshot. Fleeing the battlefield? You bet that's a headshot. Considering that these officers tend to be outside of their regiment, feelings on them can be mixed. And in fairness, certain commissars like the esteemed Ibram Gaunt or Caiaphas Cain tend to do a bit better with the whole people talking part. Because if, say, you were trying to tell a beefed up Catachan jungle fighter what to do, you might take a mysterious leave of absence inside a carnivorous plant. But no matter what I say, I don't think I can truly convey the sheer might of the Imperial Guard, so I'm gonna get a visual aid. Let's take a look at this image right here, right? Let's look. This is the cover of the 9th edition Codex for the Astra Militarum, the official cover art. Your eyes may be drawn to the dark and brutal looks of some of the main members on the front and the gigantic orc they are attacking, but zoom out a little bit. There is no floor. There is only people, and behind those people are tanks, and behind those tanks are flying artillery shells. There are 2 enormous transport ships in the sky, and their ramps are down, and on their ramps are more people. The Imperium is described as having 1,000,000 worlds. 1,000,000 worlds. And each one of them gives soldiers to the Imperial Guard for the tithe. On a given battlefield, in a given fight, foot soldiers number in the millions, tanks in the tens of thousands, and you have enough artillery to turn the night sky day. You have walkers and APCs and aircraft and horse cavalry and tanks the size of apartment buildings. You have drop troops and spec ops and rattling snipers and gigantic ogres that can't count to 4, but they can turn you into 4 pieces, and it just doesn't end. Humanity is a horde army, but instead of a horde of bugs or rampaging orcs, it's a living wall of guns. At the end of the day, though he's been ferried through hell on a ship that's 10,000 years old to some godforsaken war-torn rock, though he deployed from high orbit with nothing but a grav chute, though he is one of 10 million men and women snatched from his homeworld to fight a war he barely understands, though he has been given a weapon that fires small suns and may annihilate him as he fires because the knowledge of how it functions has been lost, though his company is supported by tractor tanks that run on anything you can burn, though he wages war against the devouring hive mind, ravenous demons and hordes of hyper-advanced aliens with strange technologies and sorceries he never dreamed existed. No one will remember his sacrifice. There will be no records of his deeds, no glorious parades in his honor, and no remembrance of his name. All he will earn is a shallow, unmarked grave on a forgotten world untold light years from home. Yet for all this thankless sacrifice, a guardsman is a man, just like you. He has no millennia-old genetic engineering, no prophetic leader, no miracles of faith. He has his lasgun, his orders, and those beside him. He is the Imperial Guard, and he will hold the line. In the end, the Astra
Fuck, that goes hard. Like, some of these quotes from 40k are just... so fucking good.
Militarum, despite fighting for the honor of the Imperium, are their own form of a massive horde army where individuality does not matter. They are merely numbers to the Imperium, and the vast majority of the conflicts they are sent to are attrition-based battles that gain virtually no ground while countless millions die. Yet this makes them the most human. For the Imperial Guard contains normal people, people who are happy and sad, people who laugh and love, and in there are stories, because there is strength in facing the horrors of the universe head on with nothing but a rifle in your hands and a prayer on your lips. Armed with an innumerable amount of Imperial soldiers and Space Marines, the Navy begins its great crusade into the stars to rescue the stranded Primarchs and reunite them to their legions. But the biggest question needed to be asked was, what would they find? The Age of Strife lasted for thousands of years. If a civilization was still alive out there in the galaxy, what would they be like? The technological advancements of humanity prior to and during the Dark Age technology was unfathomable. It allowed them to spread through the galaxy with ease and allowed them to settle once inhospitable planets. These branches of humanity were provided with the vast knowledge of human creations and were given gigantic machines to make arduous labor and ease. The spreading of these massive colony ships was known as the Long March, and these ships would be retrofitted into settlements upon arrival to their new homes. Accompanying them were the gigantic pieces of farm equipment that served multiple purposes and the specialized pilots that could maintain them. They were not only able to tend the fields and do labor, but when interstellar communication was cut off, they also did a great job of protecting the colonists against both threats demonic and alien. Because of the significance of these machines, those that could pilot them were powerful enough to be considered leaders, and the upkeep and preservation of the machines and the lineage of those who could pilot them was imperative. These machines, over the thousands of years, would eventually be known as the...
I guess that is the last faction for this video, because I know we're
must
about
be
to end.
humble of heart, strong of arm, be savage in war, loyal to hearth, and follow deeds of glory. He must keep honor with all, banish cowardice from his doings, and bring his house no shame. He must serve the emperor and defend the Imperium, thus should a knight rule himself. The Age of Strife caused these colonized worlds to be cut off from the Imperium, and the reversion of these worlds resulted in the reverence for this farm equipment turned feudal, and the leadership that controlled the devices became viewed as a noble hierarchy. During the Age of Strife, exploratory fleets from Mars found plenty of these worlds, and it seemed the majority of them reverted to a similar state. Like King Arthur seeing Merlin himself, these feudal worlds welcomed the tech priests of Mars with open arms. The mutual relationship between the Admech and the nobility was beneficial. The Admech were able to secure more worlds for mining resources and potentially long-lost STC information, and the noble houses were provided with technological know-how and modifications from the Admech themselves.
Okay.
The suits became...
I didn't know there was this connection between the Imperial Knight world and the Admechs. That is really interesting, because it makes sense. These gigantic walkers? Yeah, certainly the Admech would be interested in that.
More and more specialized, and their history as mere pieces of equipment were lost to time. What was once a tractor became a killdozer, and the Imperial Knights were born. Unlike other military aspects in the Imperium, the nobility of the Knight houses remains just that, a nobility-focused feudal hierarchy that swears fealty to either the Mechanicum or to Terra. Like the Knights in our history, once they swear fealty, they can be called to aid their respective allegiance in the heat of battle. The ones that swear fealty to Terra are led by the High Monarch, while the ones with the Mechanicum are led by the Princeps. The ones with Terra might be sent directly to the front line of war, while the ones with the Mechanicum tend to be sent to protect the Forge world. And the heraldry of these houses is what you'd expect from a generic history of knights. Houses pledging allegiances here and there, your run-of-the-mill War of the Roses aesthetic. Except instead of ponies, you have gigantic death machines. These knights can't seem to be piloted by any old person, however. A member of the nobility of any given knight house must go through the ritual of becoming. This ritual involves them sitting on the device used to control the knight, known as the Throne Mechanicum, for a full night. What's wrong with that? I mean, sitting in a chair for a full evening sounds pretty great right about now. So a pilot cannot drive a knight. They can, but it moves about as effective as Ripley from Aliens 2, big, lifter thing. It is, in a sense, a beast that must be controlled. and a pilot must merge with it. The mind of the noble is connected to the machine and must fight with the mental signatures and personalities of the prior pilots as well. Everything a knight experiences in battle is felt by the pilot themselves, be it the general movement in the battlefield or damage sustained by the machine itself. If a knight's leg is blown off in battle, the pilot could experience a broken bone in the same spot. The merging to the machine forever changes the mentality of the noble that experiences it. This connection reinforces a strong degree of nobility and honor in the pilot, and a desire to fight for the glory of their house until the bitter end, as their ancestors' minds are linked directly to the knight. The size of these knights can vary, but generally speaking, they stand in the ballpark of 30 to 50 feet tall and are protected by a thick adamantium armor. Beyond that, they have their own unique ion shield generators that give them added protection, and when it comes to their looks, the most common pattern across the Imperium is the Questoris pattern, and is honestly the one you're probably thinking about right now. But there are also smaller versions like armatures and bigger ones.
Look at that dinky little thing! Look at that little guy! It's just the tiny little knight. Look at him.
It's known as the Dominus. As for a loadout, these guys are essentially a violent Mr. Potato Head. Battle cannons, Gatling cannons, heavy flamers, thermal cannons. Up close and personal, how about a gigantic chainsword or a straight up gauntlet? And for that empty spot up top, screw it. More autocannons, maybe add some missiles. Whatever you can do to make it as over the top as possible, you gotta do it. A squire serves a knight serves a lord serves a baron, and a baron serves a monarch. So who does the monarch serve? He serves every subject, from the rudest serf to the members of the court. Chivalric fealty, when ideally practiced, is not a pyramid, but a circle. Ironically, on the surface, night worlds themselves are one of the least grim dark settings in the galaxy. Reverting to an ancient time with knights and peasants is almost an escapism from the techno hell of the modern Imperium. But this, of course, doesn't make it great for everyone. It sounds fun on paper to play a game of knights, but it's not so fun when you're the peasant of that world. For the knights themselves, the knights give their entire lives to the Throne Mechanicum, and their reality is not their own, as they have to hear the voices of thousands of generations of their ancestors controlling their actions and their lives for as long as they live. It's a strange dichotomy. When it comes to Warhammer, most to all jobs tend to be terrible. However, if there was one that could be considered enjoyable, it would be the pilot of a knight, or a princeps of their larger cousins.
Have expected
While
that.
it does contain an egregious amount of hardship to be—
I honestly would not have expected to hear that one of the most pleasant jobs you could have had in the Imperium, if you had to be on the battlefield, would be the pilot of an Imperial Knight. I would not have seen that coming. Here's a little bit back.
However, if there was one that could be considered enjoyable, it would be the pilot of a knight, or a princeps of their larger cousins. While it does contain an egregious amount of hardship to be a knight pilot, you do enjoy a wealth of privilege. A knight pilot is often an asshole who can back it up. The rich noble that, despite his braggadocious behavior, is still very much him, and he will continue to be him. But knights are not the only thing that the Imperium found lost in the stars during their Great Crusade. Due to the circumstances of the Age of Strife, humans were changing and adapting to their new homes they were now isolated on. Some of these humans evolved over thousands of years to adapt to these areas.
We have time for more.
And they were known as abhumans. Many abhumans found their way into the Imperial Guard or other lesser positions in the Imperium if they were not wiped out immediately for being too different from their human counterparts. But their abilities and appearance vary from planet to planet, and one particular group of abhumans have made quite a name for themselves in the center of the galaxy.
AKA the King, Leagues of Votan.
The origins of what will be known as the
Rocket Stone!
kin start at some point during the Dark Age technology, where their ancestors left a planet that is very much Terra and went to the galactic core to mine its resources. They brought along with them everything that they would need for a long-term stay, most important of which were the incredible AI-based supercomputers. Be it guidance, technical or philosophical, schematics, or the ability to upload the memories of a deceased explorer to gather information from them, these computers became an essential part of their everyday everyday life, especially considering that the galactic core is one of the most inhospitable places in the galaxy. It is an exceptionally star-dense location, full of abnormalities, black holes, and sentient hostile nebula. Whatever that last part means.
Yeah.
It's not a safe and easy place to make a living, and this only got worse thanks to the warp storms during the Age of Strife. In order to adapt to this area, these travelers perfected a genetic makeup that made their future clones to be more adept to the area. These future clones would be shorter and more robust than their ancestors, and the need to procreate would be unnecessary because why risk messing up a good employee when you can just make a new one? These would be known as the squats, and they would all die, except for when they didn't. And now they are known by a different name. Most void-faring
because the squats used to be a thing, and then Games Workshop deleted them from canon, and then they took them back in. I don't exactly know why they removed the squats from the canon. Anyone who knows more than me in the comments, feel free to tell me. But then they brought them back. Maybe because of the popularity of Deep Rock Galactic. I don't know.
Races have at least one cautionary tale of foolish explorers vanishing amidst its blazing stellar nurseries and strange anomalies. Yet for the leagues of Votan, the galactic core has been home now for millennia. These squat humanoids would begin to establish themselves in the core, and their goals would be the same as their ancestors. Rock and stone!
Rock and stone!
Actually, kinda, yeah. Whenever one of them would die, they would know that that sucker would need to be uploaded to the machines like their forefathers did. But the original purpose of these machines was lost to time. What was once a technical resource for them turned into a ritual known as joining the ancestors. And the fact that they were clones at this point meant that the same copy of the same individual would be uploaded countlessly. The sheer overuse of these computers and the repeated uploading of redundant data has turned these once powerful supercomputers into your parents' computer after you installed LimeWire on it, and whose 50 Google Chrome tabs definitely contain information they will return to one day. So much corruption that these computers began to develop the makings of a personality of their own. These would be known as the Votan and the kin.
I love that he uses fucking hacking scenes from NCIS, because that is... I love NCIS. I grew up on that show, but... I'm hacking.
This dwarf-like abhuman of humanity would revere them. The Votan still operate to this day, but the volume of corruption have made anything outside of their very basic functions highly unpredictable. They may not answer a question for centuries at a time, and if they do provide an answer or data, it has become so corrupted and so incongruent that it takes a literal kin wizard to comprehend it. The kin, much like the dwarves of fantasy, exist nowadays as a mercantile species that constantly work to mine and manufacture. However, their capitalistic desires are dangerous. The biggest crimes a kin can face are being lazy, unproductive, and breaking a contract. Stellar conflicts have broken out over hundreds of years due to the breaking of a deal. So if you signed a contract with a kin, you best stick to it. Because of this, the kin have been known to interact with other species in a fairly common manner. This includes humanity, who have met various members of the kin multiple times, but constantly considered them to be all a different species. Famously, the Imperium noted that the kin they referred to as the squats were their own species and were wiped out by the Tyranids. Little did they know, they were still around. The kin are acutely aware of two things. The first is that the humans of the Imperium are deeply terrified of technology, so the sheer existence of the Votan is a secret as well as the truth. This extends also to the Iron Kin, sentient robots that are treated in the same esteem of flesh and blood kin, because kin is kin. The second thing they are aware of is where they're from. They are fairly confident that they are from Terra, and they know that if this secret was to be known by the Imperium, that the Imperium might want to take ownership of them and everything they've built. So the more alien they are, the better. Now, this sounds fine and good, right? What could possibly be wrong with these guys besides the hyper late-stage space capitalism? Well, we have to go back to their creation. The kin are an entirely clone-based race, made from the computers that are exceptionally difficult to recreate. These machines, the Votan, are becoming more and more unpredictable and derelict. If anything were to happen to these machines, it would be a twofold ending of the kin.
Oh boy.
New kin cannot be reproduced, reducing their numbers, and the existing kin would have no further purpose, because the end that awaits them would be non-existent. The horror of the kin civilization is that the entire purpose of their lives is to do the best they can at their duty and upload all they know to the Votan, their ancestor cores, join their ancestors. But doing so is actually the thing that is killing these supercomputers in the first place. The ancestors were dead, but through the first truths, their legacy continued. And though their eyes had shut long ago, indeed the ancestors were watching, not with a gaze from eons gone, but with the eyes of every living kin. Each generation was the embodiment of the ancestors cast anew by the Votan. The galaxy changed. Stars died, planets were destroyed, and civilizations fell. But as long as the Votan endured, the ancestors still lived. I do want to end this last bit with an enjoyable quote from one kin. As you may have assumed, the Leagues of Votan are space dwarves with a corporate sci-fi motif.
Yeah.
But they are still very much dwarves. They're squat, they're strong as hell, and they hold serious grudges. This time it's just more about your contracts than anything else. And so because of this, they might treat most things about how you would expect a capitalistic dwarf would treat things. You misunderstand, human. I am not here to debate. I am not here to compromise. What you see as yours, I am taking for my kindred. You want to bargain? Torek, unholster our means of negotiation. As the Great Crusade continued, humanity would find their missing Primarchs, reestablish the locations of all of their various worlds, and finally reclaim what the Emperor was always hoping for. But eventually, all the Emperor sought to build would be his undoing. His original attempt to have all of the Primarchs lead his great armies and usher humanity into the better ages would end up crumbling down. And we will learn about how the Imperium backslides and the horror of the modern day of 40k in part 2.
Damn.
I will see you very soon. Thank you so much for watching.
Of course. Holy hell, what a video. Oh. Again, that was by far like one of the longest videos I've had to sit down and watch for a stream like this. Holy shit. I cannot wait to immediately start watching other people's reactions to it. But yeah, it is very fun because like as much as I know about 40k and its lore and its universe and the different races, he did talk about a bunch of stuff here that I did not know about. Like, I wasn't really that knowledgeable about the Eldar and about the Imperial Knights. I think that is the part that surprised me the most. The fact that he could tell me so much about the Imperial Knights. Because in his original Factions Explained video, he was much more like, they're big mechs that with big old chainsaws and cannons. And again, like he said, that was because at that point in time, he was like, still kind of like a casual fan, but also like wanting to try and create that bridge between the newcomer and the veteran. But this is a very interesting way of doing it. But that does also means that still the orcs, the buck boys and stuff will be for next time. The next video, whenever that comes out. And I do hope he takes his time with it and that he doesn't just rush through it all. Holy hell, I don't know what else to say. I guess just like thank you also very much for watching, my dear friends. I hope that you enjoyed this reaction. I have no idea like the ratio between me talking and me just nodding and making facial expressions and hand gestures, like how entertaining all that was. But I do hope that it was good. I know that will not be as good as some of the other many VTubers that's going to react to this, because like it's kind of like the I was about to say maybe like the disadvantage of knowing as much as I do, that I cannot do as many "whoa, is that real, chat? I cannot believe it" like that sort of reaction, which is the ones that I love to see the most in people who react to these sort of videos. But I hope you still found it enjoyable, that me, a semi knowledgeable person of this universe could commentate. But yeah, I think that's it. Links to everything will be in the description below. If you want to follow my Twitter, Blue Sky, or join me on Discord for updates and notifications of whenever things comes out. You can follow me here on Twitch if you want to be part of these live stream reactions and other like video game stuff. And there's also, of course, my Patreon if you want to go that extra step to support me in that way. And of course, the links to the original video and Adeptus Ridiculous will be in the description below, because I legitimately think that Adeptus Ridiculous is a great gateway for newcomers to get into this universe. But I think that's all I have to say. So, until next time, my dear friends, thank you all so very much for watching. My name is JohnnyFerno, and I'll see you guys next time.